Si Senador Panelo, siguradong panalo ang Pilipino! Ako ni Sal Panelo, ang buhay ko'y mamahal sa akin. Ang aking hirap, sa kanya ay gandang lumaki. Ang dami-dami niyang natulungan. Sa forma at sa ganda, sumayaw, sumayaw, sumayaw tayo, pangalaman panalo, sumayaw, sumayaw, sumayaw tayo, lahat natin sa Senado, sumayaw, sumayaw, sumayaw tayo, pangalaman panalo, sumayaw, sumayaw.
Thank you. Ang katanungan ko po ay sa campaign finance. Ang ating pong Republic Act 7166, in particular, Section 3, ay nagsasabi na ito lamang ang gastusin sa kampanya ng mga kandidato. 10 pesos for President and Vice President. And for the other candidates, 3 pesos for every voter currently registered in the constituency where he filed the certificate of candidacy, provided that a candidate without any political party and without support from any political party may be allowed to spend 5 pesos for every such voter. And for political parties, 5 pesos for every voter currently registered in the constituency or constituencies where it has official candidates. Currently po ay merong pending Senate Bill. Ang tawag po dyan ay Senate Bill 810 na in-increase. Nagkaroon po ng uniform rate na 20 pesos per voter depende sa constituency ng tumatakbong kandidato. Uniform, 20% per
20 pesos.
voter. Ngayon po, meron tayong 67 million registered voters. Ang katanungan ko po, dahil po kayo ay nasa Senado at ang primary role ng mga senadores ay magpasa ng mga batas, kayo ba'y payag na papalitan na ito? Itaas na natin ang ating limits, ang gastusin sa bawat kandidato per registered voter?
20 pesos.
Yes or no, and why?
Thank you, Attorney Rolex. We start with Secretary Manny Piñol.
Ako hindi ako covered dyan. Wala akong pambili ng ano eh. Wala akong panggastos na ganun eh. But the reality, Congressman Rolex, actually is this. We talk of 20 pesos per voter. Reality on the ground is that votes are being bought for 500, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 pesos. And this is precisely the reason why there's so much corruption in this country. Because every politician will have to save money for the next elections so that he'll be able to buy votes. I think instead of focusing on the increase on the allowed expenditure per voter, we should focus actually on how to eliminate vote buying, because this is where the massive corruption in government starts.
Agree.
Thank you. We move on to Secretary Belhica.
Isa ho sa pinakamalaki problema natin yan sa korupsyon dahil ang mga politiko na nanalo nagbabawi after election. I think election should be state-sponsored para hindi na gumagastos sa mga politiko kung sila ay mananalo at magkakaroon ng pantay-pantay na oportunidad ng lahat ng Pilipino, ilatag ang kanilang isipan at ilatag ang kanilang mga nagawa na para sa kagaganda po ng ating bayan.
Kayo po ay sumasang-ayon doon sa sinabi ng isang presidential candidate, si Leo de Guzman. Nasabi niya ang gobyerno dapat ang mag-bankroll ng kampanya ng mga tumatakbong presidente or vice-presidente.
Without knowing that that was his opinion, I agree with that statement dahil po, you know, there are good candidates that are not popular and there are popular candidates that are corrupt or bad for our country. However, hindi makilala at hindi marinig yung mga kandidato mahuhusay dahil walang pera, and it is to the detriment of our country.
Pwede po mamalaman na Commissioner Bellica, sa ngayon po, mula February 8, kung magkano ng ginasto nyo?
Hindi ko po alam, sir, dahil sa totoo lang, sa mga posters na nakikita ko sa lansangan ngayon, ni piso wala pa ho ako nagasto sa poster. Totoo po yan. Nagpapasalamat ako sa lahat ng mga tao na naniniwala sa akin printing up their own posters.
Maraming salamat po.
Okay, I saw a hand from Yusek Pimentel. You have 30 seconds.
Follow up quickly
Sorry,
for
go ahead.
Secretary Piñol.
Okay.
Rolex.
Yes, ma'am.
Alam ko wala talagang salapi si Secretary Piñol kasi consultant niya ako sa DA, no? So, Secretary Piñol, actually, pag parliamentary system, your political party will pay for your campaign expenses. Have you thought of that?
Yes, actually, we have been advocating the amendment to our political system. Masyado kasi pong nakakonsentrate sa kapital. No? Kaming mga probinsyano, maski maganda pa yung programa namin, maski maganda pa yung aming advocacies, dahil hindi kami nakaka-access sa advertisement sa telebisyon at sa mainstream media, nalulugi kami. So we had long advocated that the representation in the Senate should be by region or by state if we should become a parliamentary form of government.
Okay, we have a reaction from Yusek Pimentel.
Okay.
On that note, as I have said during my opening statement, federalism answers this. Under the federal system that the PDP Laban has been proposing, it is also included there that the anti-turncoatism and also that political parties must be state-sponsored. This is also to level up, and two-party system as well is better so that there will be loyalty among the candidates, loyalty among the people, and loyalty among the politicians.
Thank you.
Secretary Piñol, sir. According to RA 7166, ang isang partido politika ay maaaring gumastos ng 5 piso bawat botante. At kung i-multiply po natin by 67 million registered voters, ang total po niyan ay 335 billion pesos. Ang Partido Reforma ba, hindi ba kayo tinulungan kasama niyo si Doktora?
Wala, kanya-kanya kaming gastos eh. Yung aking kinakampanya, kawayan eh. Seedlings ng kawayan, no? Ang pinamimigay ko sa mga probinsya para lang makilala ko as an environmental advocate and as an advocate of the greening of the Philippines, no? Honestly, this is one of our problems actually. Kaming mga mahihirap na kandidato, dahil wala kaming access sa advertisements and media, we could hardly get across. In fact, that's the reason why I believe even if we have been advocating for good programs in government, even if our track record is unblemished by corruption, nasa tail end kami ng survey.
Thank you. Let's hear from Dr. Padilla. You were mentioned.
Agree ako kay Secretary. Totoong sinasabi niya talaga, no? Yung aming gasto sa kanya-kanya. Alam mo, hindi ako nakaka-advertise sa TV. Dito lang sa SMNI ang kaya ko. Hindi ko biro mo naman sa isang malaking istasyon, 30 seconds, 643,000. How can you afford that? Kung hindi ka,
Pakiulit po.
643,000 for a 30-second advertisement.
Kasama na yung 50% discount, ha?
Hindi ko alam, pero yun ang rate na binigay nila.
Nandun po yan sa COMELEC Resolution 10730.
Anyway, I'm just telling you, ganda ng bayaran. So, how can a candidate now who never stole money, wala naman siyang pork barrel, wala naman ayaw niya kumuha ng pera kung saan mga malalaking how can you afford that?
Thank you, Dr. Padilla. Let's move on to Secretary Panelo. We would like to hear from you.
Ang katotohanan talaga, hindi po nasusunod yung batas na yan. Yung mga mayayaman, may malalaking pera, may mga koneksyon, talagang gumagastos sila. Kaya matagal ko na pang iniisip na kailangan baguhin natin ang election law with that particular matter. For instance, para mabigyan noon ng oportunidad kami mga kandidato, lahat ng kandidato, obligahin po natin ang mga telebisyon at radyo na pagdating ng eleksyon in a certain period, kailangan lahat sila ay libre. Ganun din po ang mga dyaryo para maging pantay-pantay. Otherwise talagang mahihirapan yung mga walang pera. Aasa na lamang sa suporta ng kanilang mga kaibigan, personal, at paano kung wala. Talagang walang mangyayari sa kandidatura ng kahit na sinong tao na salat sa pera. Hindi po nasusunod yan. Baguhin na po natin ang election.
Okay. Deputy Speaker Marcoleta.
Sa totoo lamang po ay ang nangyayari talaga, marami pong funders ng mga political candidates. Ito ay open secret po yan, kahit kanino kayo magtanong. Ang tinitingnan po ng mga funders na yan, lalo na yung mga malalaking kumpanya, titingnan nila yung kung sino yung nauuna sa survey. Sila po talaga ay hindi gumagastos. Halimbawa, nasa unang 5 kayo o unang 8. Wala pong relasyon itong kung 5 piso, kung 2 piso. Kung pare-pareho po sana yung economic standing ng bawat isa, baka sakaling magkaintindihan tayo rito. Pero kagaya ng sinasabi, sa 5 piso lamang po, 355 billion at 335 million po ito. Saan naman kamay ng Diyos kami kukuha ng ganun? Kahit na po lagyan mo ng 20, ito po 1.2 billion, lalo na po hindi namin kaya yon. Sa makatwid, hindi po importante kung magkano yung magagastos. Ang importante sana, kami magkaroon ng pagkakataon, kahit hindi kami gumastos ng ganun, makilala rin kami as equally competent candidates sa lahat ng pagkakataon.
We have a reaction from Mr. Ding Diaz.
Ang kailangan po natin,
Go ahead.
ang kailangan po natin ay total overhaul. Diyan po tungkol sa mga batas tungkol sa eleksyon. Tama naman po yung sinasabi ni Secretary Panelo. Tama rin po yung sinasabi ni Secretary Bellica. Tama rin po yung sinasabi ni Calio de Guzman. We have to level the playing field. Kasi po, at the end of the day, ang kawawa po ang mga Pilipino. Dahil ito pong mga iboboto sa eleksyon, sila po sa kanilang kamay ang kinabukasan ng bayan. Kaya dapat yung tama lang ang pwede po nating mahalal.
Okay. Senator Gringo Honasan, let's hear from you.
Governor Rolex, not because I am an independent candidate, but political parties in this country do not exist. It's not just a question of funding. It's a question of platforms and programs. pansinin po ninyo, pag may narinig ka, ang tanong ka agad, sino ang nagsasalita? Dapat ang tanong, ano sinasabi? Multi-party or bi-party system? Para pag narinig mo yung plataforma, alam mo na kagad kung anong partido, anong grupo. Salamat po.
Alam niyo po, sa Iloilo, kayo lang pong may poster na silk screen. Nung picture nyo sa EDSA pa.
Okay, I just saw the hand of Yusek Astra Pimentel.
That is why it is very important. That is why it is very important that we build strong political parties. And I beg to disagree with Senator Honasan that political parties do not exist in the Philippines. The PDP Laban has a very strong history of integrity in the Philippines as a political party, 40 years of existence without any oligarch supporting it. So thank you very much.
Senator Honasan, would you like to react to that?
I agree completely po.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
that was easy. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Padilla?
Secretary Greg Onasan, I also have to disagree with you. Partido Reforma has a platform. And tatlo lang kaming senador sa Partido Reforma, Senatorial, si Elazar, De Rosario at Padilla. At lahat kami, we carry the platform of our president, a presidential candidate, Ping Lacson. So kami, seryoso kami. Pero one more thing, voter education po ang kailangan. Alam mo, I go to barangay captains, ang ganda-ganda ng programa, then hihingi sila ng pera.
Okay.
Ang bigay ko, gamot. Gamot lang, hindi pera.
Okay, reaction from Mr. Ding Diaz?
You know, no offense meant po kanino man. Pero I've seen a lot of electoral exercises come and go. Noong po panahon ni Ferdinand Marcos, everybody wants to be KBL. Konti lang po yung laban. Di ho ba? And then, nung naging Cory Aquino, halos lahat ng KBL, naging partido ho ni Cory Aquino. And then, and so on and so forth. Sa madali pong salita, whoever will be in power, lahat po nagkakaroon ng shift. Even PDP Laban. Sa totoo lang, I was with the president when he was campaigning. Wala po kaming kasama. Nung nanalo, Santambak po gustong sumumpa para sa PDP.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ding Diaz. We will still get around to your 1 minute in a little while. Let's move on to Senator JV Ejercito.
I also believe that we have to give others a chance. No? Napakabigat ho talaga ng tumakbo bilang senador, sa totoo lang po. No? Sana po kung ma-enforce lang yung talagang limit TV ads, no? or other ads to level the playing field para naman po lahat ay marinig. No? Hindi naman po pwedeng lahat na lang ng tatakbo ay yung may kaya o kaya suportado ng mga may kaya. We have to give chance to others. If also given the chance, kung talagang magkaroon tayo ng overhaul of the political system, no, dapat hindi na tayo maging personality based, dapat ideology platforms, no, two-party system, but that will require an amendment. Pero sa ngayon po, I hope that there will be a way now to level the playing field. Dapat yung political ads dapat pantay-pantay, no? Kasi po yung nakakalamang, siyempre mas marami, napakabigat. Kaya na sinabi ni Doktora, napakabigat talaga, no?
But do political ads matter?
They do.
Yes,
Have you done your research on whether, putting in 1 million or X number to, you carrying a cavan of rice or, dancing here and there, do they matter? I think you should dig that up first, before you put in so many zeros to these political ads.
Yes, unfortunately, Doctora, no, political ads still matter, no? Based on surveys, it's still free TV, radios, no? Social media, of course, is already a big help, but it's still free TV and the radio that is that will really keep you on the mind, no? On top of mind of the voters. So pag nawala ho kayong political ad, mawawala rin kayo sa survey. Kaya fortunately na nung pumasok ko, nagkaroon na rin na tumulong. So it's really difficult. It's very, very expensive. Sana ma-level natin play field so that we can give chance to others.
With all due respect, I disagree. Political ads do not matter. Listen to me as a political scientist. Pay attention to the data. Kaya wag na kayong magkalkal ng salapi para dyan sa ads ninyo.
Okay, would anyone like to react to that?
Well, according to COMELEC Resolution 10730, promulgated November 17, 2021, for TV ads, meron kayong diskwentong 50%. For radio ads, 40% ang diskwento. For print, 10% ang diskwento.
Wala.
Okay, let's get those
Meron din ako
discounts.
ditong meron din akong data ng Nielsen Ad Intel as of December 31, 2021.
What does it say?
Sa listahan ng mga senadores, huwag ko na sabihin ng pangalan, no? Pero ang pinakamalaki dito, na gastusin, na ginastos na pala, 910 million pesos.
2021.
Okay, reaction from Dr.
This is for traditional media.
Okay, Deputy Speaker Marcoleta.
Ang problema, Gov. Rolex, ay yung COMELEC resolution na yun na kung saan ay merong 50% discount sana, ito naman ay base sa published rate. Ang ginagawa po ng mga networks, yun pong 50% na yun, i-jack up na nila sa presyo nila, pagkatapos at saka nila ibibigay yung 50%. Parang wala ka rin nakuha ang porsyento. Dapat sana, dun sa negotiated 3-year contract sana, dun ibabase para makita natin talaga nagbibigay ng discount.
Alam niyo po, nung tinake up yung Senate Bill 810 sa Senado, meron akong report na hawak dito. May 19, 2021. Actually, this is a news article. Ang sinabi ng ibang senadores, huwag ko na sabihin kung anong pangalan ng senador, no? Sabi nila, we have to resort to under-the-table arrangements.
What do you mean?
Just so, ang kanilang sosi will still be on the limits. In fact, ang sarang sabi dito, sabi we all cheat anyway.
Grabe nga eh.
Huwag ko rin sabihin ang pangalan ng nagsabi nun nasa report siya.
Okay.
Ang sabi naman ng isa, dinodoktor namin ang aming sosi. Discussion on the Senate floor ito. So I hope that
amend.
when you file your sosi, 30 days after the elections, you will tell the truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Yusek Pimentel, you've been raising your hand.
The lucky 7 of the PDP Laban slate. Wala pa yata kaming mga TV ad. Personally, me, wala akong TV ad. Wala akong ad. Even in the Facebook, I don't boost. Pero napakaganda po ng programa ng PDP Laban. The Lucky 7 have the 11-point agenda that we would like to present to the people through grassroots.
Okay.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Daphne?
Yes.
I have a follow-up question earlier. Mr. Diaz actually said that
Yes, Madam.
there's a need, or he is in favor of overhauling as well the laws, no, electoral laws. Am I right? Did I hear
Yes.
it right?
Yes, Madam.
Okay. So if that's the case, if you become a senator, let us say, you be given a chance, would you also propose to overhaul the COMELEC, given the so many issues that it's faced with and it's being challenged with so many credibility issues? Would you propose that as well?
Whatever it takes. Madam, for me, my belief is very simple. The Filipinos, kaya po naghihirap, medyo may kamalasan po sa mga leader. Because bihira po sa mga leader ng Pilipinas ang nag-iisip at nagtataguyod ng kapakanan ng karaniwang mamamayang Pilipino. Kailangan pa po ang isang karaniwang mamayan pumunta po sa ibang bansa para po sila magkaroon ng pagkakataon sa mas magandang buhay. Dito po sa atin, kulang.
Okay. Sir, we still haven't heard from Mr. Jess Aranza. Go ahead. You have 1 minute, sir.
If a parliamentary system will cure and will give equal opportunities, I will be for it. But let me do this and say this publicly para sa mga taong bayan. If I have 100 million today, hard-earned, why should I spend it and change it with bad money? Tandaan po nyo, ang masyadong malaking gumastos, babawiin yan sa inyo. Dugo nyo ang dadana. Pawis nyo ang papatak. Maawa kayo sa mga pamilya nyo. Ang magastos, yan ho ay walang pakundangan sapagkat madaling kitain ng pera. Pero kaming mga hard-earned money, pinahalagan po namin. We value it so much for our family. Salamat.
Thank you. We hear from Mr. Marcoleta.
Mr. Diaz, sinabi po ninyo kanina na meron po kayong sasagutin kay Dr. Malindog. Tinatanong niya kung sagaling maging senador kayo, anong gagawin niyong batas para ma-reforma ang COMELEC? Hindi po niya yata sinagot.
Hindi po. Okay.
Saka na lang after the election.
Yes. Okay, let
Saka na
me
lang daw
open
after
the
the
question
elections.
to
Yes, ma'am.
all candidates now, because this is a very
I can answer
important
that.
question, and I think we can start with you, Mr. Diaz. Yes.
when you said overhaul, I agreed. Yes, we need to overhaul. Because, sa totoo lang ho, doon nag-umpisa ang problema eh. Even with the budgetary figures, yung mga allowed, sa totoo lang, it's unrealistic. Kaya po, alam nyo, nagiging salasalabat na po ang problema. Ngayon, kung ano po ang batas na dapat kong gawin, siguro po, I will adhere to what Secretary Belhica said, na dapat po gawing state-sponsored po ang eleksyon para it will level the playing field para po sa tama. At palagay ko, panahon na para magkaroon po ang Pilipinas ng karapat-dapat na mamumuno sa kanilang pamumuhay.
Okay, go ahead.
Regarding the napaka-unfair naman po din siguro sa mga tapat na naglingkod sa Commission on Elections ang sabihin natin na lahat sila ay nakorrupt na, because there are so many employees, especially doon sa baba. Me personally, nagsimula ako sa pinakamababang trabaho sa Senado as the front desk officer, and I know that in all government offices napakarami pong tapat.
Okay, Secretary Piñol, and then let's go back to Dr. Padilla and Ms. Kiram because we have not heard from them first. Go ahead, Mr. Piñol.
Hindi ko alam kung ano ang ibubunga nitong ipagtatapat ko sa inyo. Pero merong isang area, hindi ko banggitin ko saan. Ang bilihan ng boto umaabot ng 15,000 pesos per voter.
Malaki yun.
Yes. Ang problema, pagkatapos ng eleksyon, nandun sila lahat sa supermarket, ubos yung tindahan ng supermarket. But after the election, pipila sila sa gilid ng kalsada para kumuha ng tubig sa isang closet na maliit, because that politician who spent hundreds of millions of pesos to win his electoral post will not spend any money anymore on any project because he has to save money.
Thank you, Mr.
So it's
Piñol.
a vicious cycle actually of corruption which starts with our political system. Something has got to be done about it.
Okay, let us stick to our time limit. Let's move on to Dr. Padilla and Ms. Kiram.
Talagang may problema ang political system natin, no? Talagang it's very hard for good people who don't have money to win. Totoo yun, no? So talagang nagkakalabanan sa sa pera. And we have to really amend it, no? Tapos siguro voter education, importante. Pero may pag-asa ko tayo kasi ang dami mga kabataan ang bumoboto ngayon. At nakikita ko sa kanila na naghahanap talaga sila ng mga bago. Naghahanap sila ng mga tao na iba, no? Sawa na sila sa luma. So it seems there's hope. And we need to give them that hope. But the COMELEC, for example, the party list system, may mga iba talagang represented by the nurses, hindi sila binigyan ng accreditation. Iba naman, hindi mo intindihan kung ano yun, binibigyan ng accreditation. So there's so many rumors that abound. Magkano daw magpa-party list, etc., etc. So you cannot blame the people. So yes, we need to do major reforms in the COMELEC, just as we have to do major reforms sa ating electoral system and methods. Let's thank you.
So shouldn't you shift Dr. Padilla to a parliamentary system, because all the challenges you have identified will in fact be resolved under that system?
I am actually open to a parliamentary system of government and even a federal system. You know, one thing about the federal system, no? You know, like magkakakampi kami sa same party, pero in effect, we're competing against each other. Because the senators are representing nothing except the whole country. If you had a federal system, we would be representing a certain region at least. Hindi kami mag-aaway, di ba? At least there'll be some order. So yes, I'm open to both.
Okay, let's go back to
Dr. Padilla, Daphne please.
Yes.
Dr. Padilla, nabigyan na ba kayo ng prescription ng butante at hiningihan kayo ng pera?
Prescription? What do you mean?
Ng gamot?
Marami ho yan.
Minsan, 2 taon na nakalipas.
Opo, alam ko ho yun. Tama ho yun. Ano namin yun? Marami na hong ganon.
Just a minute, we have Secretary Panelo.
Alam po ninyo, ang katotohanan talaga, kahit na i-reforma natin ang election code, mayroon talaga tayong malaking problema. Sapagkat ang majority ng mga elektorado ay kulang sa edukasyon. Kung ang lahat na butante ay kapareho po natin na mataas ang pinag-aralan, ito po ay tama ang pagboto. Sa ngayon, syempre, open sila sa lahat. Buying, intimidation, coercion, and everything. Yun na importante, edukasyon muna para mabago natin ang kalakaran dito sa ating bansa.
Let's hear first from Ms. Noor Kiram.
Bilang independent, sinasabi nila, pag tumakbo ka ng senador, dapat may at least 500 million ka. 500 to 1 billion. Ang inisip ko, bakit ako magbibigay ng 500 million sa isang tao, isang grupo? Kung kaya kong ipamudmod sa mga tao yon. So, yung sa amin lang, sana magkaroon ng fair na, lalo na sa mga independent candidates. Kasi ang nangyayari ngayon, pag independent ka, hinihingan ka, pinepera nila. Yun yung totoo. Matapang ako magsalita dahil nangyari sa akin ngayon.
Okay.
Ma'am, may follow-up question ako.
Yes po.
Kasi itong pagtakbo mo ng senador, siyempre malaking bagay ito.
Yes
Sa
po.
tingin nyo ba, nag-prepare kayo ng budget dito? At kung nag-prepare kayo, magkano ang pinrepare nyo?
Actually po, nung tumakbo po ako, ang nagpatakbo po sa akin, yung grupo ko, yung ACCW, Anti-Crime Community Watch. Dahil wala na silang boses. At the same time, ang Muslim community. So sinabi ko, wala akong ganong kalaking pera. Magkano lang ang pera ko? Kaya nyo ba ako? Kasi hindi na iaano yan sa pera, kundi sa boto ng bawat isa.
Thank you.
So magkano ang budget nyo po?
Konti lang po.
Konti lang. Okay. Mr. Jess Aranza has been raising his hand.
Si Attorney Suplico, ito totoo yun, yung mga reseta. Mayroong mga grupo na talagang magbibigay ng reseta. Pero ibinibigay dun sa kalaban. Yan ang tigabawas ng pera ng kalaban. So, ang punto ko lang dito, sinasabi ko, na ako tumakbo, ang tama lang ho ang kakayanin ko. Naggawa ho ako ng sarili kong coffee table book at binebenta ko sa membro ko sa Federation of Philippine Industries as doon ko lang kinukuha ang models na aking kampanya.
Let's move on to Senator JV.
Ako po, ang paniniwala ko dapat sana maging basihan ng pagpili ng kandidato ay yung performance, yung track record at character ng kandidato. Ay hindi rin po ako naniwala, sana po wag basihan ang popularidad. Kaya nga po ako po'y umaasa at sana po'y hindi popularidad ang magiging basihan po natin. Kaya hopefully with ako'y naniniwala man ay ang pili matalino, titignan nila ang karakter at syempre ang integridad at ang performance ng kandidato. Sana po, yan ang basihan, hindi po ang popularidad.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to our original question. We have 1 minute for Mr. Diaz and go down the line to Ms. Pimentel.
Yes.
The original question, did you ever get to answer that one?
Yes,
or?
I think so.
You're done?
Yeah. And I have a follow-up question with former Senator Ejercito. With regard to campaign funds, sa inyo po, how much is your budget for this senatorial campaign? Is it something way beyond before, di ba nagkandidato kayo before nanalo kayo, and then nagkandidato kayo ulit, hindi pinalad, pero this time you're running again. Do you think it's within those budget that you have before or not anymore? Or mas lower? And how it impacts your campaign?
Definitely it's much lower because I have to be honest with you, I'm not prepared to run 2 consecutive national elections. Talagang nagdalawang isip po ako talaga dito. So itong pagtakbo ko, dahil gusto ko, may mission at obligasyon po ako, dahil sa dumaan pandemya, sabi ko nga, Universal Healthcare Act, kailangan matutukan. Kaya mas mababa man ang budget ko, sabi ko sana yung aking passion, yung aking obligasyon, natapusin to kahit na mas maliit ang aking pong budget this year. Mas manipis ang aking ads, pero sana po sa performance sa track record at sa ating pong balak ay sana po ay magwagi pa rin tayo.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to you, Sec Pimentel. You still have your 1 minute. Go ahead.
Ako ay nananawagan sa ating mga kababayan. Suportahan natin ang programa ni Pangulong Duterte. Ituloy ang pagbabago. Ituloy ang pagsulong ng federalismo. Ituloy ang parliamentary change ng ang federal parliament government para sa Pilipinas. What happened here sa atin ngayon? Maraming beses nang naipasa sa House of Representatives ang charter change. But it never passes through the Senate. Importanteng makuha natin ang suporta ng taong bayan para sila ay bumoto ng mga senador na magsusulong na baguhin ang saligang batas. The Senate has become 24 republics of the Philippines, a stepping stone for them to become president or to become vice president. Kaya nga po, ako ay nananawagan sa ating mga taong bayan, let's push for true change. Let's push for real change.
Thank
Baka
you.
closing statement nyo po, ma'am. Later on siguro, parang closing statement nyo kasi tinatanong pa eh.
Hindi siya, yung 1 minute niya kanina kasi paikot tayo ng ganun. Okay, we have a
Isa lang.
reaction first from Ms.
Minsan, hindi rin natin masisi ang taong bayan. Napakarami yung mahihirap sa ating bansa. Sabi nga nila, in a feudalistic society, there can never be a free election. Yung mga mahihirap kung makita mo, informal settlers, kailangan naman may angat lang sila. Bigyan ng kunting edukasyon, basta huwag ng formal. Turuan lang kung paano mamili at paano ang epekto kung sila'y nagtumatanggap ng pera. Ako'y lalakarin ko ang ganyan kahit nasa salay kong pera.
Thank you. Okay. Round 2, we're done. Any follow-up? Okay, let's move on. Thank you very much, Attorney Rolex Suplico. Let's take a quick break. SMNI Senatorial Debate 2022. We'll be back.
Sabi po ni Mayor Nola, malapit po ako kay Presidente Arroyo. Ikwento ko sa inyo yung context kung bakit ako naging malapit kay Presidente Arroyo. At tunayan, hindi ko po siya kinala. Kaya lang, natatandaan niyo, dinimanda siya na Ninoy administration. Yung CPE. Nagkataon po ako ang abogado ni Chairman Ben Avalos. Dahil ang demanda sa batan, kahit kung hindi ko kliyente si Presidente Arroyo, sinama ko siya sa depensa ng walang bayan. Sinama ko siya. At na-appreciate niya po yan. Kasi nga sa buwatan eh. Pag sinabi na kasi sa buwatan, the act of one is the act of all. Yung ginawa ng isa, at kayo ay nagsasabuatan, ay kung ano yung kasalanan ng isa, kasalanan ng lahat. Kaya nung giniwan na si Papalos, kasama si Presidente Arroyo, o hindi sila pareho, pag nag-intend siya, identity siya. Kaya kailangan depensa ang lahat. Nakalang sa buwatan at walang krimen. At swerte naman po. Pero, nung ikinulong siya, binisita ko siya minsan. Hindi ko siya kailangan personal, pero dahil nga napasama siya sa depensa ko, ay hindi ko pa siya tigilan. Nung malaman ko nakakulit sa veterans, pinuntahan ko po siya. Nung pumunta ko ako doon, medyo nagtaka ako dahil dating presidente ng bansa, parang
bisita. Pangalawang bisita ko ganun din. Pangatlo ganun din. Natukusan ko, kaya naman pala, yung mga tao na malapit sa kanya, mas sumusuporta sa kanya.
Kita na malalas mas.
Nangangamba, bisitahin siya. Kasi, alam mo ba, nung kinulong siya sa veterans, 3 sentry ang nagbabantay sa kanya. Hindi lang 3, 4, dahil papasok ka ng veterans, dahil na sa main gate. Pagdating nyo sa ward, sa hospital niya, doon pa lang sa parking, meron na mga polis. Ililista ka doon, ililista ka. Pagdating mo doon, bago ka pumasok doon sa kanyang ward mismo, meron pa rin. Ililista ka na naman. Hindi lang yan. Meron nung, anong tawag doon? Camera. CCTV. Hindi ba na rin sabi, nakalista ng pangalan mo, nakatutok pangalan sa'yo. Bago ka pumasok sa kwarto niya, kakapkapang ka na naman, sumusulat ka na ng pangalan mo, nandun na CCTV camera. Kaya natural labang, natatakot. Kaya sabi nila sa akin, huwag ka nang pumunta ron. Baka pati ito ipakulong. Huwag ka naman. Kaya ako po kasi aktivista ako. 20 taon po kinalaman si Marcos. 20 taon na. Yung pala, hahantong ako magiging abogado niya. Alam niyo bakit? Nung sumali ako kay Cory, nanalo kami. Aba, nung nanalo na ako kami, nanalo ko sa Manila Hotel. Binubugbog, pinabatuta ang mga Marcos lawyers. Ewan ko kung sino ang mga matatanda na rito na mga Marcos lawyers ng panahon. So sabi ko sa rito, bakit teka muna, kaya naman kinulaman si Marcos, kaya nagagalit kami sa paglabag ng advice niya. So pagdating ko sa grupo, kami yung kasi yung mga lababan ni Marcos, mga batang abogado, kami nila Joker Arroyo, kami nila Rene Sagisa, yan, pati yung Sabina, isama namin. Sabi ko kay Joker Arroyo, hindi natin yung executive secretary, dadaling Senador. Sabi ko, Joker, kailangan mag-issue tayo.
Still at the SMNI Senatorial Debate 2022 live at Okada, Manila. Now at this point, bago tayo magpatuloy, I would like to go through every candidate 1 minute, give every candidate 1 minute to answer before we interpolate or react and do follow-up questions so we can get through the evening, and we have a lot in store still. So let me call on our next question. Will be coming from the chairman and CEO of the Manila Times, Mr. Dante Clink Ang II. Go ahead, Mr. Ang.
Thank you, Daphne. Good evening to you all. I'm glad to hear that many of you are interested in education and the economy, because my question is related to that. According to one estimate, the Philippines has about 460,000 seafarers before the pandemic. I believe that number has been severely reduced since then. Still, Filipinos outnumber other nationalities in the pool of seafarers. However, the Filipino seafarers, about 55,000 before the pandemic, working for European flag carriers, may be blacklisted if the European Maritime Safety Agency, or EMSA, finds that the Philippines has failed to comply with the 1978 standards of training, certification, and watchkeeping, or SCTW convention. Even the Maritime Industry Authority, or Marina, is not optimistic, and it warned that the Philippines will likely get a negative EMSA report, according to a story in the Manila Times last December. The question is, what bills or amendments are necessary to improve the national standards on maritime training, education, and certification in order to protect the interests of Filipino seafarers and their dependents?
Okay. Secretary Belhica.
The problem really with this is that yun pong mga seafarers are being asked, on top of this, are being asked to para bang mag-training pa ulit-ulit ng same trainings and being trained by people who hasn't even gone up the boat. So pagbaba po ng mga seafarers po na yan, wala pong trabaho yan. And asahan na po natin na hindi tayo papasa. In fact, yun na po ang pag-uusapan dyan. So we have to prepare. The government has to prepare for these people, to give them jobs, to give them resources. And that's why I said, one is to take care, fund agriculture, open up the Philippine Venture Capital Funds so that we can put money dito po sa mga kumpanya nagsara at mga SMEs na gusto magsimula ay meron pong kapital na makuha.
Okay. Secretary Panelo.
Ang nakikita ko pong problema dyan, kailangan ang gobyerno natin ay magpasa ng batas kung saan lilika po tayo ng mga eskwela para sa kanila. Kinakailangan kumuha tayo ng mga eksperto sa labas ng bansa at pag-aralin po natin at gawin nating libre. Sapagat ang katotohanan naman po dyan, mga seamen, seafarers, talaga mahihirap yun. Otherwise, hindi naman pupunta sa ibang bansa para magtrabaho. Pakahirap sa dagat. Kaya kailangan po talaga, kung bumabagsak yung galing ng mga Pilipinong seafarers, ay dahil sa kakulangan ng aral at ng training. So, lumika po tayo, magsusulong po ako kung ako'y maging senador, ng isang batas na lilika ng libreng eskwelahan para dito sa mga seamen at seafarers at kumuha tayo ng mga eksperto upang sila ay may train, upang lumakas ang grupong yan.
Okay, Deputy Speaker Rodante Marcoleta.
Nakakalungkot po yung tinuran po ninyo, Dr. Ang, pero yan ay manifestasyon po lamang ng napakalaking problema ng education system sa ating bansa. Sa totoo lang po, ang Department of Education for 25 years ay nilalabag po niya yung Republic Act 8047 na kung saan doon ay sinabi na sa kanila na wag na silang gagawa ng libro. Ito'y ipagkatiwala na lang sa private sector publishers. But after 25 years, the DepEd is in continuing contravention of that law. Yung pong sinabi ninyo ay tama. Manifestation lamang ng babang pagkilala ng Department of Education sa mga batas na ginagawa ng Kongreso. At kailangan po, in the context of your question, yung mga seafarers natin, kailangan talagang makakuha tayo ng mga magtuturo sa kanila, competent, at saka yung mga pasilidad nila para sa ganun, ma-fast track natin yung pag-i-standardize ng kanilang mga skills at yung pag-certify po na kailangan po ng kanilang employers.
Okay, Senator Honasan.
Dr. Klink, our approach to this situation, whether through legislation or executive action, must be data-driven and science-based. We must derive the data from those who are on the ground. We must conduct a quantitative and qualitative inventory of every Filipino seafarers, domestic helpers, teachers, all over the world, so that we can hammer out policy. Let me add, partly in response also to an earlier question by Dr. Ana, that we are managing time here. Whether it's elections or attending to the immediate needs of our disenfranchised seafarers, we must be sure that we are faster than the situation on the ground.
Thank you. Senator Ejercito.
Our most precious resource is our human resource. Kaya nga po ang ating OFWs, pati ang mga seafarers, ay in demand sa buong mundo. Kung ganyan yung balitang yan ay nakakalungkot, pero we just have to level up. No, we have to improve our training. We have to educate and probably establish more training centers so that we will make sure that our human resource, our OFWs, our seafarers, should always be a cut above the rest. Kahit hanggang ngayon, sila pa rin po ang most sought after, but probably we just have to improve the standards. We have to level up and improve the training centers para na sa ganun ay magtuloy-tuloy pa rin na mabigyan ng pagkakataon ng mas maganda buhay kanilang pamilya. No? They are our modern day heroes. No? Kahit na mahirap ang buhay sa ibang, lalo na po sa laot, sa ibang bansa, they are still there for their families. Kaya nga po, we have to maintain that we have to be a cut above the rest. We have to improve our training. We have to establish, we have to level up again our training methods for our OFWs and seafarers.
Hey, Mr. Jess Aranza?
We have to enact laws that will serve as criteria for establishing school, setting standards for teaching, and even apprenticeship. Because these are things that are so important. I have seen the maritime school in San Fernando, La Union. My wife is from that place, and I pity them. Walang dating. Ibig sabihin, talagang sa tingin ko, hindi nag-aaral, bubulak-bulang yung mga estudyante. So, selection, standardization, higpitan po natin yan. Parang naghigpit ang flying, if you recall, nung private yung iba, nung pinasukan ng Philippine Airlines ang aviation school, maganda ang mga pilotong lumalabas. Bakit? Kumpleto sila ng standard, kumpleto ng training, at kumpleto ng apprenticeship you're flying. That should be the case. Stricter and high standard level of teaching.
Thank you. Dr. Mengita Padilla?
Nakakalungkot talaga, pag ito nangyayari sa mga seafarer schools ay isang reflection lang ng ating educational system. Hindi lang dito, ang dami. Marami sa kanila, mga high school, hindi marunong magbasa. Shocking, no? So something is very wrong with the educational system. Now, hindi tayo mag-give up dito. Agree ako sa marami sa kanila. Dapat may batas, level up, ano bang kakulangan? We can get experts from abroad, lagyan ng pera, bigyan natin ng tunay na eskwela na may mga equipment. Because nowadays, high-tech na equipment baka wala tayong ganun. Tapos ang dami-dami mga eskwela na walang standards. We have to be stricter now with the standards. So it can be done, but we have to admit first that there's a problem. No? So once there's a problem, matuto tayo sa mga eksperto sa abroad, we can even have review classes, paggastusan ho natin. So as a senator, I will enact the law for this. Kasi we need our seafarers, not only are they OFWs, dapat proud tayo sa kanila. We have always been a seafaring country.
Ms. Noor Mahal Kiram.
Yes po, siguro magkaano po tayo ng bill na may proper education, free education, pati po yung pagpapadala sa ibang bansa, mas maganda po yun. Dapat po meron din tayong complete facilities at the same time, mga equipments. Kasi yun po ang kulang sa atin dito. Kaya nga po yung mga trainings nila, hindi makumpleto. Yung substandard po yung way of education nila. Kasi po wala po tayong facilities, yung complete facilities and equipments. Thank you po.
Okay. Mr. Ding Diaz?
Hanggang sa huli, hindi po mawawala ang aking pagtitiwala sa kakayahan ng mga Pilipino. Kung nagkakaroon man po ng kakulangan, kaya po sa mga international standards ay hindi po pumapasa ang ating training, ang pwede ko pong sisihin dito ay ang mga nagre-regulate ng industriya po nito. O yung pong sinabi nga po ninyo, yung marina. I would agree, again, it goes back to education. Even training goes to education. And kahit na po anong ganda naman ng education po natin, if there are no proper facilities that would aid them in their training, wala pong mangyayari po dito. Again, I would like to say, hindi lamang ho sa mga seafarers, kung hindi sa lahat po ng ating mga kababayan na naghahangat ng magandang kinabukasan. Kaya po natin mag-excel, kaya po nating umangat sa ating pamumuhay. Ang kailangan po lamang natin tamang suporta ng mga namumuno sa ating bayan.
Okay, Yusek Pimentel.
The Filipino seafarers are the #1 competition of European seafarers. Itong move ng Europe to blacklist the Filipinos sa seafaring industry is not just a political but also an economic move. Huwag nating bigyan ng pagkakataon ang mga European to blacklist the Philippines because we know that around the world, it is the Filipinos that is very highly required ang kanilang mga trabaho. Even the seafarers, we have so many seafarers that have excelled. That is why all the shipping industries in the world are taking the Filipinos. In fact, the Europeans, during my term in the Commission on Filipinos Overseas, came to the Philippines to study the seafaring industry of the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you. And Secretary Manny Piñol.
The huge demand for Filipino seafarers actually resulted in the mushrooming of so many maritime schools, fly-by-night yung iba, and that actually resulted in the deterioration of the standards. Now, the thing that should be done here is first audit and evaluate existing schools, and then come up with a refresher course which would be compliant to the European Union standards. Wala tayong magagawa dahil sila nag-employ. We have to come up with refresher courses that would be compliant to EU protocols on maritime services. And yung mga hindi papasa, then we will have to provide them with livelihood opportunities. We don't even have to enact the legislation to do this.
Thank you, Secretary. I think one of the issues is that there's confusion on which agency is responsible. I think for a time, this was being tossed between Marina and the Commission on Higher Education. I think DepEd is not part of the situation here, but there are even some complaints among schools that even the regulations or policies change over time. I heard one school invested millions of pesos in a simulator because they were required to do so, only to find out later when policies change that simulators are no longer required. My question is, what laws, what bills will you introduce in the Senate to address the situation?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Isa sa mga dapat nating ipasa is that the requirement for maritime institutions to have a facility for the training. Kasi marami tayong schools, maritime industry institutions na walang facility to train. In fact, there should be partnership between the government, the maritime institution, and the foreign agency or the foreign company to bring in a ship that is world-class for the training of our seafarers.
Okay, any follow-up?
I think that's one of the problems. And ironically, the Philippines is a maritime country.
Yes.
Testified by the fact that we man most of the world's vessels, except that our maritime industries are underdeveloped relative to other countries. In fact, one of the criticisms in the Philippines is that we have one of the worst maritime safety records in the world. So maybe I'd like to hear what laws you would like to propose in the Senate to remedy this problem.
Okay, let's get specific for the laws. Go ahead.
We could remedy this by having a law on because this is about education sa ating maritime industry. There are a lot of foreign governments that are willing to send in their teachers in the maritime industry. That's a partnership that we should build on as well.
Go ahead, Mr. Belgica.
The problem with the maritime industry is nag-pop up nga ho yung mga eskwelahan na hindi naman nagdi-deliver ng tamang pag-aaral, pinagkapirahan yung mga seaman. So this is an opportunity and this is the right time for government to put up schools that will put up the right standards and get the right professors and trainers to train these seamen. Dahil po, ang nirereklamo di ba mga seaman, yung mga nagtuturo daw sa kanila, hindi pa raw nakatapak ng barko. So that's a problem why the Philippines has went down its quality.
Okay. Go ahead, Secretary Piñol.
Ang una dapat na i-resolve siguro is saan ba dapat yung ating maritime schools? Should it be with SHED or Marina? Number two, kung gagawa man tayo ng batas, dapat yung batas na yun na magsiset ng standards for allowing a school to operate as a maritime school.
Thank you. Dr. Padilla?
Yeah, basically, kailangan ng Maritime Standardization Education Act. Parang ganon, no? Para standardize lahat. Like nangyari noon sa mga nurses, nag-crop up yung mga mushrooming of nursing schools sa puro substandard kasi maraming kailangan ng nurse. Same thing happened here. We have to have standards. Tapos yung permits, very strict sa permits. Kasi doon din nagkakaroon ng problema. So, Standardization Act for Maritime Education and stricter tayo sa giving permits. And that includes, the standardization includes everything. Everything.
Thank you.
One of the complaints of the private education sector is that there is too much regulation. In fact, a lot of them are complaining that even as there are measures in government, for example, raising the salary of teachers, it only applies to those working in the public education system, but not to those in private. So it results in an uneven playing field. For those who are espousing free education, right? What do we do about the private education or private maritime schools that have invested private capital for a public good?
Go ahead, Mr. Marcoleta.
I think the oversight function of Senate should be strengthened along that line, Dr. Because these 2 months regulations must be studied, and Congress, I think, is in a position, particularly the Senate, to look into which regulations are harming the particular interest or the concerns of these maritime schools. Let us also accredit the schools. There should be a legislative action to accredit the schools so that masiguro po natin ang skills and standards na kinakailangan po para maproteksyonan ang ating mga seafarers.
By the way, thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm not yet a doctor, pero sinusulat ko na po ang dissertation ko. Malapit na po, but thank you for the promotion po.
Mr. Ang. Okay, let's hear from Secretary Belhica.
The tuition fee voucher fund po ang aking pinopropose dyan, where the students will choose which school he wants to go to. So meron siyang voucher na dadalhin sa kahit anong eskwelahan na gusto niyang puntahan para siya po mamimili ng pinakamahusay na eskwelahan at the least cost, instead of having the scholarship program na binibigay mo po sa eskwelahan and then yung students. This way, we will get the best schools giving the best services at the least cost na choice ng estudyante.
Okay, I saw your hand, Ms. Kiram. Go ahead.
Yes. Hello. Dahil sa too much regulation, siguro mas maganda kung magkakaroon ng monitoring side dito sa national. Kasi pag minsan, dahil sa backing system, kung alimbawa mataas yung position ng nasa nakakapasok. So yung standardization is bumababa. Siguro mas maganda yung may monitoring talaga dito sa sa national.
Okay, Mr. Aranza.
Hindi lang ho sa standard. Iyan ay maganda, pero kailangan din i-screen natin ang mga papasok. Sa Philippine Airlines, out of 1,500 na nagpasok sa non-paying, only 15 ang kinuha. 1 month ang examination every other day. So, ganun din dapat because alam mo mas mahirap daw ang barko iliko kaysa sa aeroplano. Andun yan. Milya-milyahe ka bago ka makaliko. Kaya tandaan nyo, mas mahirap. Practical. Totoo yan.
Thank you. Secretary Panelo.
Babalikan ko po yung original na proposal ko na isang legislation na lumika ng free school for seafarers na kukuha tayo ng mga eksperto para matuto itong mga kababayan natin. Pangalawa, alam po ninyo, kailangan libre para magkaroon ng kompetensya dito sa mga private schools para i-improve nila. Pag nakita nila na itong libre, mas okay pala. I-upgrade nila mga sarili nila.
Actually, Asik Pimentel mentioned something very interesting, and I find it ironic that we have the best seafarers in the world, except that most of them are working abroad. And that, I think, is a testament to the state of our maritime industries. And I was wondering if you have any bills in mind that will help strengthen the maritime industries.
He asked Secretary Belhica, and then we go to Senator Honasan.
Yeah, yun nga po ang problema. Meron tayong mga libre, pero libreng bulok. Mga libreng eskwelahan, pero wala namang gamit, wala namang teacher. Kaya nga po, babalik na rin natin sa sitwasyon. If you have a tuition fee voucher fund, then the student can choose the best school for the least cost. So mga eskwelahan will raise their standards according to mga kinakailangan ng mga estudyante to deliver the services or to deliver the education that they need.
Okay, Senator Honasan.
Dr. Klink, a maritime industry inventory and performance audit bill is in order. It must also occupy, our seafarers must occupy a precise location in our national order of priorities. This goes beyond education. There is the funding requirement. Pero once we determine kung nasaan yung seafarers natin, automatic na yung funding. Ibig sabihin, ito lang ang pera natin, ito ang unahin natin. What is their contribution to our GDP? The domestic maritime industry. What is the contribution of the overseas seafarers to our GDP?
It's about 10% of GDP.
That should be the basis.
Total remittances.
Yes, Doctor, that should be the basis for any legislation or executive action.
Senator JV, you're... Oh, go ahead, Mr. Marcoleta. Oh,
Dr. Padilla, kanina po may sinabi kayo na legislation ang sagot dito. Pero yung sa tanong po ni Dr. Ang kanina is there is an imminent danger talaga na kailangan talagang ayusin na sapagkat kapag hindi natin na-address ito, kawawa po yung mga seafarers na talagang matatanggal at pati kanilang pamilya. Alam naman po natin ang legislation magtatagal. Ano po yung, bukod sa legislation, ano po yung ibig niyong sabihin na para ma-address natin ito?
Dr. Padilla.
Ano po, kung kailangan mabilis ho, pwede mag-EO, no? But ang dami mga private schools naman who have better facilities. But they're languishing. Tanong niyo rin yun, no?
Hindi po.
Di
Ang
ba pwedeng
EO po kasi
mag-public-private
ay
partnership?
executive department po yun. Ang pinag-uusapan po natin kung sakaling nasa Senado tayo.
Legislation ho tayo or oversight
Kaya nga
muna.
po, ang legislation po magtatagal. Pinakamadali lamang po dyan yung first reading. Pero pagdating mo sa second and third reading, kung nasa mababa kang kapulungan, pupunta sa Senado, magtatagal kayo
Kung
yan.
declared as urgent, di ba, priority bill, mabilis siya. It also depends on the executive, di ba? It also depends on the executive. But can I finish what I was saying? Can I say something about the public-private partnership? Because even sa other schools, the public schools, the private school owners are languishing. Nagko-complain sila, nahulugi sila, wala silang suporta. Maybe a partnership can do. So kung meron na silang equipment, magagamit sila ng mga public. So at least, magtutulungan sila. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, just a reminder that we should let every candidate finish their time before we continue. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Ranza.
Yung tanong ni Mr. Ang kung paano mapaigting ang negosyo ng vessel. Siguro, sa ngayon, mayroon ng bagong 7 ports na nagawa ang San Miguel. Siguro, pwede naman yung foreign vessels, pag dumating, i-unload nila so that the vessels in the Philippines will be one to carry. That way, we can also prevent smuggling. So, marami yung bagay na po pwede. Pero yung sinasabi kong smuggling ko, natabo kayo, ang eroplano pwedeng lumiko kagad. Ang vessel, milya, bago siya unti-unting lumiliko. Meski magtanong po kayo sa mga maritime.
Hey. Are we satisfied?
Well, last year po, the Philippines was assigned as the ASEAN country representative to the European Union. This is a 3-year assignment po from ASEAN. What posture po ba would you recommend that the Philippines could take with regard po to the EMSA regulation and the improvement po of domestic standards in maritime schools?
Who would like to answer that?
May I?
Secretary?
Actually, yung compliance sa EU protocols, hindi lang confined sa maritime. When I was with the DA actually, tinututukan ng EU yung compliance natin sa illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. No? And ang threat was that kapag tinuloy nyo yan, we will ban. The same thing, the same story here. Now, I will agree with Dr. Padilla. Kung mabagal yung legislation, then let's ask the next president to issue an executive order directing Marina to conduct an upgrading of the skills and the training of our maritime people.
Thank you. Anyone would, okay, go ahead. Congressman Marcoleta.
Given my experience in the House of Representatives, kahit na po certified yung bill, talagang magtatagal pa rin po yan because it has to go to the process. Pupunta sa committee, magkakaroon pa ng TWG, pupunta ngayon sa plenary, magdidebate ng napakaraming panahon, hanggang sa mag-second reading and third reading, hanggang sa dumating po sa Senado, kung wala nang bycam, baka sakali po. But the question is very imminent po eh. Merong threat talaga na mawala. Ang iniisip ko sanang isasagot nila po ay gamitin ng oversight function. Tawagin lahat ang mga responsible offices para gawan ng paraan kagad.
Thank you, Dr. Padilla and Secretary Panelo.
No, actually Congressman Marcoleta, sinabi na naman yung kaninang oversight function sa mga nangyayari ngayon, no? Pero bukod ho doon, siguro kung magaling ang ating next president, ay makikita niya yung urgency. Pwede siya mag-EO na, executive order. Bakit ka pa mag-oversight? Hearing pa rin ho yun, di ba?
Magaling talaga po yung susunod na president.
Okay, thank
Dapat
you.
magaling yung susunod na presidente.
Okay, Secretary Panelo.
Iniisip ko, balikan natin yung kanina na nabanggit dito na maraming problema din yung mga private training school. Aba, di kung may problema sila sa pondo, ay bigyan natin ng pondo. And then, gawin natin stricto ang paggamit ng pondo. May mga requirements tayo. Kailangan maging compliant sila. Para nakakatulong na tayo, nagiging stricto pa tayo at nakakatulong din sa industriya. Yan po ang pinakamagandang gagawin ng ating gobyerno.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Belgica.
I think the problem lies with Marina dahil sa kanila bumagsak ang level ng pag-aaral. So maybe we should just remove the entire thing from the Marina and put it in another department na mag-i-improve talaga ng quality in education na tinuturo po sa mga seafarers natin. Dahil sobra pong reklamo dyan sa Marina na natanggap ko ng aking opisina, and I think this what happened here is a result of their failure.
Any further follow-up, Mr. Dante Ang?
Well, yeah, the problem there is that, the agency that might be responsible is the Commission on Higher Education, and there are already people who are complaining that the CHED is imposing unreasonable regulation on private schools. In fact, there is a bill pending in the House, House Bill 10282, which will make all SUCs an instrument of the national government. And I think there's grave concern among not only the SUCs, but the entire tertiary education system about this particular House Bill.
Okay, any reaction? Go ahead, Secretary Panelo.
May naisip po ako, ito bang mga seafarers natin, ito ba ang karamihan nito'y mahihirap? Ito bang karamihan nito'y mga hindi nakatapos sa edukasyon? Kasi may problema tayo kahit yung Tertiary Act. Alam po ba ninyo na 12% lang ng pinakamahihirap ang nakakapasok ng free education at 17% ang galing sa mayayaman at 64% ang nasa middle class. At nahihirapan po sa pagpasa kasi nga ang problema, ang mahihirap kulang siyempre sa meron silang mga proctor, meron silang mga trainee, iba. Kaya lang may problema talaga tayo yung portion.
Thank you. Any follow-up? Okay, go ahead. We have room for two more.
With regards to the too much regulation complaint of the Marina, the President has issued and implemented ARTA and the ease of doing business. This is the first step towards that. I believe that what is important is that we adopt a modernization of our, we should be data-driven. Like for example, right now, Marina, the Marina should have the exact numbers of Filipinos, where they are, and even I'm saddened that the Marina was not included in the Department of Migrant Workers.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Piñol.
May I just go back to an earlier concern raised by Dr. Ang? Yung paano natin i-improve yung ating local maritime industry. Alam nyo, yung mga barko natin napakaluma na. Ang iba dyan, World War II vintage. And napakabagal, napakamahal. In fact, it is more expensive to ship banana from Mindanao to Manila than to ship the bananas from Davao to Japan. So kailangan talagang tutukan ito at magpasa tayo ng batas na dapat may age limit yung mga barkong ginagamit sa ating...
You're correct, Secretary. The problem is in 2015, the Senate passed, the Congress passed the cabotage law.
Yeah.
Except that since 2015, all of the benefits that were expected from the passage of that law remain unrealized. And as you said, mas mahal po magpadala ng cargo from Cagayan de Oro to Manila than it is from Manila to Hong Kong, despite 7 years of the cabotage law.
Well, since 6 years na po yun, I think it's due for review. And Congressman Rolex Suplico would know the process involved in a review of an existing law.
Okay. Thank you so much. If there are no further follow-up questions, we need to take a break. We still have a lot of questions coming up. So we'll have to take a break for now, but please stay tuned. SMNI Senatorial Debate will be back shortly.
edukasyon, kalusugan, at sa edukasyon.
To the SMNI Senatorial Debate 2022. Now, many of you may be wondering, where is Attorney Karen Jimeno, who normally is the one moderating this series of debates? Unfortunately, she is in the middle of having an important family affair that she has to attend to, and that's why I was called in. So thank you very much for having me here. And now let's continue. Okay, so for this round, we will have the question will be asked from political scientist, Ms. Ana Malindog Uy. Ma'am Ana, go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening to everyone. My question would be more on constitutional change. Okay, it has been argued for some time now by many that the 1987 Constitution, which took effect in 1987 under the leadership of then President Corazon Aquino, needs to be revisited. Either it will be amended or revised altogether. Now, on this note, are you in favor of constitutional change? Yes or no? And why? And if the answer is yes, how would you propose it? Would it be an amendment or would it be a revision? Now, if it's an amendment, what specific provision in the Constitution would you want to amend? Now, if it's revision, because that's two different things, then are you in favor of a parliamentary form of government as against to presidential, what we have right now? And at the same time, are you in favor of a federal system of government as against to a unitary system that we have at the moment? So that is the question. So it's up to you to put it together, your answer, in briefly.
Thank you, Ms. Ana. For this round, we start with Secretary Panelo. You have 60 seconds.
Unang-una ho, ako'y pabor dyan. At kailangan po yung foreign ownership, baguhin na natin yan. kailangan na kailangan. Like for instance, dun sa renewable energy, abay kailangan, sa ngayon 40% pwede lang silang pumasok, ownership. Mahirap pang kumuha ng mga partners. Kaya kailangan, taasan natin yan para makapasok ang investors. Pangalawa, gusto ko pong baguhin yung pagpili ng mga justices, ng mga judges. Sa akin pong pananaw, yung pong present system, mali yun. Kailangan, base natin sa examination at oral para papasa sila, kaya sila i-appoint. Para wala po silang utang na loob doon sa mga nagpapadrino at sa appointing power. Iyon po ang
So
pinakamahalaga
you're
sa
in favor of amendment, not revision?
Aba, marami po kasi kulang ang oras natin para isa-isahin ko yon. Pero sa ngayon, yung dalawang yon.
Thank you. Deputy Speaker Marcoleta.
Sa either revision or amendment, ang importante po ay may mapalitan tayong mga ilang provision dyan. Unang-una naman, kahapon po pinag-uusapan yung pag-claim sa SABA, pero ang sabi ko, hindi natin magagawa yon sapagkat sa 1987 Constitution, inalis po yung historic right or legal title. Kaya po kung gusto nating i-pursue yung claim sa SABA, ibalik po yun na nandun sa 1973 Constitution. At ako po ay laban din sa political dynasty. Gusto ko po tanggalin yung as may be provided by law para hindi na po kailangang magbatas sapagkat wala naman pong sigurong legislator that will legislate against his interest. Hindi mangyayari po yung anti-dynasty kapag nilagay po yung as may be provided by law. Dapat period na yun. At yung nga pong economic provisions talagang, marami po talagang dapat baguhin doon. Kailangan nating maimbita yung maraming mga ngalakal at magbibigay ng kapital dito sa ating bansa.
Thank you. Senator Gringo Honasan.
Whether it's amendment or revision, it must address certain issues. Unity, productivity, centralized planning, decentralized execution. If we decide to move into a federal form, no part must be bigger, stronger, or richer than the whole. Otherwise, there is no logic to this being a republic. Those will be the issues.
Okay, let me clarify things first now. Because when you talk about constitutional amendment, what you do there is you just revise or you just change the text of certain provision. But when you talk about revision, you actually propose a change in political structure in the country. Like for example, from a presidential to a parliamentary form. So that's why I'm asking which of which you would push for if you be elected in the Senate. Because when you revise, it means you have to choose parliamentary, federal, presidential, or parliamentary. So that's two different process, I think, or nature of change. So that's why you make a choice, amendment, revision, then the follow-up
Dr.
question.
Ana, if it's an either or,
It's an either or.
I would go for revision.
Okay.
And we do it now.
Okay.
And we decide that this occupies top priority so that we can address systems and not personalities. And that includes the political party system. Let me add that I have not changed my position on political parties. When I just noticed Yusek Pimentel and Dr. Padilla getting mad with Dr. Claire, I defer to their better judgment.
Thank you. Senator J.V. Ejercito.
I'm in favor of amending the 1987 Constitution because it's been more than 40 years since it has been written. The world has changed, so much. By the time it was written, there was no such thing as World Wide Web, internet information technology. The world has become so small at this point. So we need to make the Philippines more attractive to foreign investors. That's why I'm more particular that I am in favor of amending certain economic provisions, be it allowing foreigners bigger share by owning land. Anyway, hindi naman nila maiuwi yung lupa, no? Pwede sila mag-invest, but the land will stay here. So we have to study that, but I'm in favor really of amending the economic provision so that we can adapt and be attuned to the changing times and be more competitive as compared to our ASEAN neighbors.
Okay, Mr. Jess Aranza.
I'll go for revision. And manner, I would like it to be a con-con. so that it will avoid former mga politicians to meddle again. And I don't want to have some amendments because it's so hard to amend, and especially giving people, the foreigners, to own land. The moment they come in and go into subdivision of residential, then that will be the end of the ability of our poor people to buy house and lot. The price will rise. Kaya sana, doon lamang, if they want to, then they do reclaim. And when they reclaim, they can do whatever they want. But not an existing land that will be for our poor brothers and sisters in the Philippines.
Hey, Dr. Mengita Padilla.
I'm in favor of revision. I think we should really consider a federal form of government. I believe it should also be done early. Whatever revision should be done early. We have to give more leeway for foreign ownership of certain businesses so we can be more competitive in the world. And I also agree about the political party system. We have to revisit that as well. So I'm for revision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have Ms. Noor Mahal Kiram.
Yes, I'm for revision para federal system government. Kasi at least magkakaroon ng kanya-kanyang plano para in every state, yung Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. At least hindi nakakalimutan ng Mindanao, hindi nakakalimutan ng Visayas, and some parts of the Philippines. Kasi yun yung medyo napag-iiwanan pagdating dito sa, kasi ang focus is nasa national lang. So siguro dito sa about the Sabah claim, siguro i-revise din yun. Kasi kami yung naapektuhan bilang isa sa direct heirs. Naapektuhan ako, pati yung mga kamag-anak ko.
Okay, thank you. Now we have Mr. Ding Diaz.
The political geographical division of our country is really ideal for a federal system of government, because we've got regions and each region can become federal states. However, there is no state that will survive without a strong economic base. So we go back to economics. Now, I would like to go back to prior to 1986. We are doing a lot of good things with the parliamentary system of government. We were able to minimize red tape, and the government bureaucracy was getting to be efficient. Okay? However, because it was a Marcos creation, or so what's thought, then, of course, the framers of the 1987 Constitution did not want it. But let me say something. I believe a shift to a parliamentary system of government could be the saving grace for our country and our people.
Thank you. Yusek Astra Pimentel.
Definitely, I am for the revision of the 1987 Constitution, because I call the 1987 Constitution an emotional constitution. Minadali ang paggawa nito, hindi masyadong napag-isipan, hindi dumaan sa mas masusing paggawa. Ituloy ang pagbabagong sinimulan ng Pangulong Duterte. He already created the Constitutional Commission to study the 1987 and propose a new constitution. We must move for the parliamentary federal system of government wherein Vice President and President will be voted as one, and they will be another term for the President and Vice President. Sayang ang ating Pangulong Duterte. Napakagaling, napakaganda ng performance, hindi mabigyan ng pagkakataong mamunong muli. And there should be regional representation in the Senate for the senators, 70-30 sharing of national wealth, anti-turncoatism, and strengthening of local government units.
Thank you. Let's hear from Secretary Manny Piñol.
The Constitution is a living document reflecting the feelings, aspirations, the dreams of a people at a specific time. The time is now to revise the Constitution. Let's move towards federal parliamentary form of government. We have a working model, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, although it is a hybrid because they have an assembly, but at the same time they also have congressmen and mayors. But BARM is working very well. As the former point person of the President for the BARM, I can tell the whole country that the BARM is working very well, and we could actually study the success of BARM in as far as bringing government closer to the people is concerned. Now, on economic reforms, yes, I'm in favor of economic reforms, but I am against the 100% ownership of land in the Philippines. Mauubos yung lupa natin sa mayayamang dayuhan kapag binenta natin yung mga lupa natin.
Okay, maraming salamat. And now we move on to Secretary Bellica.
Yes, parliamentary federal form of government revision. At unang ko pong babaguhin ay ang justice system. Napakahina po ng justice system dito sa Pilipinas. Halos wala napaparusahang kriminal at korap. Dahil nagtatambak ang kaso sa korte at meron kulang na kulang po ang mga judges. You have only 2,500 judges to adjudicate for 110 million Filipinos. You know, kaya meron isang korte, sabi ko na I have 6,000 cases and may backlog. Kahit magtapos ako ng isang kaso, isang araw, 365 cases lang matatapos ko. Kaya ho hindi napaparusahan. I will strengthen the justice system. I will add more courts, add more judges so that napaparusahan po ang mga kriminal at korap. Dahil corruption po talaga ang dahilan kung bakit naghihirap ang ating bayan. At kung mapaparusahan po yan, maibabalik ang penalty of death sa mga heinous crimes and corruption, marami pong babait dito sa Pilipinas.
Follow-up questions?
I have a follow-up question. Okay. Sa mga nagsabi na they want to have kind of a constitution, revise the constitution or propose a new constitution, and there are some of you who said that, you know, you want federal system at the same time parliament. Now, let's go back to parliamentary. Why do you think we need to why we need to change to a parliamentary form? What's the advantage of having a parliamentary form of government as against to a presidential form of government?
Well,
go ahead.
In a parliamentary form of government, you can change a bad leader at any given time, and you can hang on to a good leader as long as you want to.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Marcoleta, Congressman Marcoleta.
The other positive aspect of a parliamentary government is that there is a fusion between the executive and the legislative departments, and therefore may expedite po ang mga batas na gagawin because they consult with each other. Hindi matagal ang proseso, lalong-lalo na kung ang mga batas na iniisip natin ay kailangan madaliin, kagaya po ng halimbawa kanina ni Dr. Ang na imminent po ang problema na kinakaharap ng ating mga seafarers. Ito ay masusolusyonan kapag ang dalawa ay very cooperative departments of government.
Okay, thank you. Any rebuttal? Okay, Secretary Panelo?
Ang dagdag pa po doon, pag parliamentary kasi, as correctly stated by Congressman Marcoleta, may fusion. So in other words, hindi na sisisihan ang dalawa. Sapagkat magkasama nga sila a vote of no confidence lang, palit ka na. Pangalawa, yung pong magiging issue sa election, hindi na personalities, kundi political parties na. Yan ang kagandahan.
Okay, Ms. Pimentel, go ahead.
Exactly, under the parliament system of government, political parties will be strengthened, representation will be fair and objective, as well as in the parliamentary, based on studies all over the world, parliamentary form of governments are the less corrupt governments because yun na nga, madaling palitan ang leader na masama ang performance.
Thank you. Mr. Ding Diaz.
Daphne,
Yes.
there's a follow-up. In the past, the Chacha Express started in the House. Pero ang pumipigil nito ay Senado. And you're all running for the Senate. So ako po'y natutuwa na parang lahat kayo ay gusto ng Chacha. Ito po'y matutuloy sana kung kayo po'y mahalal bilang Senador ng Republika.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Ding Diaz.
In response to Vice Governor Suplico.
Please do, please.
Yes. Probably the reason for this is that we are running not for ourselves. We are running to further the interest of the Filipino people, which has long been suppressed by the wrongful leaders that has been being elected in our country, whose interests are all what are theirs, not what is the people's.
Okay, anyone? Okay, go ahead, Senator Honasan.
One major consideration is the cost. Not only the economic or financial cost, the political cost, the social cost. It is said that the 87 Constitution was a very angry Constitution. And it's a rule in life. You do not make decisions when you are angry, happy, tired, or all of the above. Lastly, one consequence is the local government code. We devolved authority and responsibility. We forgot to devolve the money. These are things that we should address frontally.
Go ahead.
In defense of the local government code, I believe that Senator Nene Pimentel fought for the correct distribution of the national wealth. In fact, right now we are very happy that President Duterte really fast-tracked the Mandanas Garcia ruling para sa lahat ng local government units.
Okay, Secretary Panelo.
Doon po sa revision ng Constitution, meron nagsabi rito na maganda federalism, which is true. In fact, yun po sinulong ni Presidente Duterte. Subalit, nung isang araw nga, sinabi niya, wala, I give up. Kasi ayaw ng taong bayan. Pero mukhang nakikita natin, mukhang hindi naman taong bayan ang ayaw. Mukhang mawalang galang na sa mga senador. Sila ang kumukontra. Alam niyo mo bakit? Under federalism, mawawala yung kanilang term. Kasi kailangan mo ng mga dalawang senador sa region, makakat yung term nila, kaya kinontra nila.
Okay, Dr. Uy.
Sige.
Go, Ma'am Ana.
Just one more.
Okay. Mr. Marcoleta at Senator JV.
Ang problema po kasi, bago natin ma-revise o ma-amend ang Constitution, ay kailangan po talaga either a constituent body or a constitutional convention. Pinagtatalunan po kasi namin palagi kung ano ang gagawin. Kung Constituent Assembly, ang gusto naman ng Senado palagi, separate voting. Samantalang ang ating saligang batas, pwede namang joint voting. Ito po yung pinaka-problema natin kaya hindi natin ma-revise. Kailangan alisin natin ang pamumulitika para kung gusto nating i-revise, ma-revise natin o kaya kung i-amend ang
Senator JV.
Siguro matanong ko lang po tungkol sa federalism, no? Anybody can answer. Maganda ho yung idea, no? We will give we will have autonomous states. No? Ang problema ho natin, ang kailangan i-address doon, yung pong mga mahihirap na regions, baka lalong mas maiwan. In the study of federalism, no? Okay po takin niya, kaya lang, ang magsusurvive lang ho is Calabar Zone, NCR, and probably Cebu region. So baka anybody can.
There's a follow-up question. You have a follow-up question?
May I just comment on that?
There is a follow-up question from Dr. Carlos, then I will have a follow-up question.
Okay, let's go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Carlos.
Yeah. Okay, it seemed like the spirit of everyone is really to migrate to parliamentary system. And I'd like you to consider the 3 pluses of a parliamentary system, which is 1, you only have a 2-week, 10, 12-day campaign period, unlike what you're having here where you're campaigning forever. Number 2, term limits will not be a relevant issue because you can be 100 years old and for as long as you are elected as an MP, you will be an MP. And third, political dynasty will not be an issue because you will be elected by the electoral constituency. And yes, the part I forget, that if you want a political leader to stay there longer than 2,000 days, then you get a chancellor or a prime minister who will be there until he falls dead. So, aren't those 4 major selling points for parliamentary system?
A reaction to Dr. Carlos. Go ahead, Secretary Piñol.
Actually, this is a reaction to the statement of JV, you know. Yung sinabi na kawawa yung mahirap na region kapag nag-federalize. Actually, yung BARM is the poorest region and it's doing well. So, medyo siguro kailangan natin pag-aralan na mabuti.
May pabodi tayo.
Go ahead, Senator JV.
Yes, I'm afraid, but we just have to address that lingering question about federalism. But if it will be addressed, then I will be supportive of that, if that can be answered.
Okay, let's go back to Dr. Carlos's 4 points. Any reaction to that? Go ahead, Yusek Pimentel.
First reaction to Senator JV's comment. In the federal system form of government that PDP Laban has proposed, there is an equalization fund. Tinatawag nating equalization fund wherein the poor regions will be developed also and will be helped by the federal government. And I totally agree with Professor Carlos about the points on parliamentary form of government.
Hey, go ahead.
Yeah, I have nothing to say to react to Professor Carlos' statement dahil tama po lahat yun. Pero siguro tama rin yung sinabi ni Senator JV that there are provinces and regions na hindi kaya. So I've gone around and I realized that there are regions na kaya. So pwede na tayong mag-selective federal government. Doon sa mga regions na kaya, probinsya na kaya, bigay na. Doon sa mga hindi kaya, suportahan muna na national government hanggang magkaya na sila magsarili.
Okay, Ma'am Anna, you have a follow-up question?
Yes, my follow-up question would be not exactly about, well, you've answered already my question, no? And I have a sense of what you want when you get elected, hopefully, as senators with regards to constitutional change. Now, my question is related to that in some ways, no? My follow-up question. As you know, in this country, there is such a thing as communist insurgency. And we're talking about constitutional change, and some of you would want to have amendments to the Constitution. Now, my question is, pabor ba kayo na institutionalized? I mean, when you speak of institutionalization, is talagang mag-create ka ng body and all that and sustain funding and everything. The NTF-LCAC, institutionalized NTF-LCAC to address and to, para mawala na ang tinatawag mong communist insurgency as you go through this constitutional or amendments in the Constitution. So that's my follow-up question.
Okay, Deputy Speaker Marcoleta.
I am in favor
And
of
why?
institutionalizing LCAC by way of a legislative action. Napakatanda na po ng insurgency sa ating bansa. Napakalaking pera ang ginugugol natin dyan para lamang labanan ng insurgency. Ngunit hindi nagtagumpay yan. At ang nakita kong pagtatagumpay ay nakukuha dun sa localized approach na ginagawa ng administrasyon ni Pangulong Duterte. Kaya ako po ay naniniwala na kapag ito'y na-institutionalize natin, unti-unti, maalis po natin ang insurgency, ma-achieve natin ang kapayapaan sa bansa.
Mr. Jess Aranza.
Ang LCAC po ay hindi military activities, hindi offensive. Ang pagkaalam ko, ang LCAC ay binibigyan ng karapatan yung mga barangay lahat yan na magkaroon sila ng sariling kabuhayan, sariling paghahanap buhay, upang sa ganun, mawala sa kanila yung mga paghihikaya sa kanilang sumama doon sa mga revolusyonaryo. So, hindi ho military yan. Yan ho ay ginagawa na mabuti para magkaroon ng kabuhayan sila mismo.
Salamat. Mr. Ding Diaz.
Ang aking pong paniwala regarding the communist insurgency, wala naman po talagang totoong ideolog dito sa atin. Wala po yung hardcore. At ako po'y naniniwala, maski na po yung mga rebelde na nabubuhay po sa bundok, hindi po nila gustong nilalamok sila sa kanilang pagtulog. Hindi rin po nila gusto na malayo po sila sa mga mahal nila sa buhay. Ang gusto po nila at gusto nating lahat, mabuhay tayo ng maayos. Sa pamamagitan po ng NTF-LCAC, palagay ko po, malapit-lapit na tayo sa katuparan ng pagbibigay ng maayos na pamumuhay doon po sa mga naliligaw ng landas.
So you are in favor of institutionalizing it?
Okay, Secretary Belhica.
Yes, in fact, when I was chairman and commissioner of the PACC, I was a member of the NTF-LCAC. And rest assured that if God allows that I be elected or work as one of your senators, we will institutionalize the NTF-LCAC and fight every move to defund it again. Maganda ho ang ginagawa ng NTF-LCAC, talagang effective ang kanilang barangay development program dahil nararamdaman ng tao at mga rebelde ang gobyerno tumutulong at maabot sa kanila.
Okay, salamat. Yusek Pimentel, you were going to say something?
Without development, without peace, there is no development. The NTF-LCAC should be institutionalized. The barangay development program should be funded, and we should fight insurgency, even the recruitment of our fellow Filipinos who are abroad. Dahil kahit ngayon po, yung mga rebelde, nire-recruit kahit yung mga OFWs at kahit yung mga OFs para labanan ang ating gobyerno.
Daphne, follow up to Commissioner Belhica. Baka sakali pong lapitan kayo ng CPP, NPA, NDF at hingihan kayo ng permit to campaign. Kayo pa yung bibigay doon?
Hindi ho. Over my dead body.
At kung may kaibigan kayo mangonsulta sa inyo, kasi sa local officials, realidad yan ha. na babayad ka doon para makakuha ka ng permit to campaign. Anong advice nyo rin po?
Bahala na siya sa kampanya niya, pero kung ako nasa lugar niya, hindi ko gagawin yan. In fact, andyan ang NTF-LCAC, andyan ang mga kasundaluhan, yun ang lapitan niya. Dahil funding the communism will only lengthen the war or yung awayan, and we should stop doing that.
Now, tinanong na ito ni MJ Mondihar, ang NPA ba, si PPNDF, kalaban ba o kaibigan?
NPA, kalaban po yan. Dahil that's who they are. Pero tama rin itong sinasabi nila na marami po dyan, wala ng ideolohiya, ng gugulo na lamang. In fact, most of them should be treated as criminals, no longer as NPAs.
Maraming salamat.
Salamat, sir.
Secretary Panelo?
Thank you, Dayan.
Gusto ko lang po susugan yung mga sinabi ng mga kasamahan dito upang makita nyo ang damdamin ng mga kandidato ngayon kaugnay dito sa NTF-LCAC. Gaya po ng sinabi ko kahapon, sa aking paglilibot sa buong bansa, yung pong mga lugar na nabigyan ng malaking pondo ng NTF-LCAC ay nawala yung mga rebelde. Kaya kailangan talagang gawin ng permanente ito upang yumabong ang mga lugar na pinagbubugaran ng mga komunista.
Okay. Pakisagot daw po ang tanong, kaibigan daw po ba or kalaban ang NPA? Go ahead, Mr. Diaz.
Yeah.
Neither. Okay? Dahil marami po, alam ko, marami po sa mga rebelde, sumama po sila roon, hindi po dahil sila'y naniniwala sa adhikain ng mga komunista. Sila po ay pumunta po rin doon dahil nakatikim po sila ng kaapihan, nakatikim po sila ng kapabayaan. Ngunit doon po sa samahan na yon, nakita po nila na mayroon pala silang kasama. Pero hindi po nila naiintindihan kung ano po ang pagiging komunista. Yun po ang katotohanan dyan.
Go ahead, Secretary Piñol.
I am for the institutionalization of the NTF-LCAC. And contrary to claims na anti-communist campaign, it's actually a rural development program based on incentivization. No? So, kung tahimik ang barangay mo, eto may pera ka. At very effective. And to answer the question of Congressman Suplico, yes, nangihingi ng permit to campaign ng NPA. When I was governor, hinihingan nila ako. I did not give 1 peso.
Okay. It seems that are we unanimous in thinking that the NTF-LCAC should be institutionalized? Are there any dissenting opinions? None.
There's none. Okay. And also, follow-up question with that institutionalization. Would it mean as well that if you will be elected as senators, you will not defund NTF-LCAC?
Oh,
of course not, no?
Definitely.
No.
Of course not.
Okay, thank you so much.
Can I say something?
Meron lang akong
Oh, madaming gusto mo salita. Go ahead, Secretary Panelo.
Hindi, kaugnay po dun sa sinasabing yung mga rebelde, sila ba'y kalaban o kakampi. Sa totoo lang, yung NTF-LCAC na programa, yun ay pabor sa mga komunista. Sabagat hindi po ba ang pinaglalaban nila? Kabuhayan. Pinaglalaban nila kailangan ang kanilang mga kailangan ay tugunan. Tinutugunan nga po eh. Kaya pabor nga sa kanila yun. Kaya nawawala sila sa pagre-rebelde laban sa gobyerno.
Go ahead, Secretary Belnica, and we'll go to that end after.
Yeah, it's just a rebuttal. Iba ho kasi NPA eh. Ito ho yung may ideolohiya. Ito po yung kahit anong pakikiusap ng gobyerno, pakikipag-usap at inaabot ng gobyerno, ayaw pumayag. Yun, kalaban po yun. Pero yung mga nadadala sa kanila dahil sa mga issues na nilalabas sila sa korupsyon, kahirapan, iba po yun. Yun po ang inaabot ng NTF-LCAC. So, NPA, kalaban po ng gobyerno yun.
Dr. Padilla?
Ako in favor of institutionalizing. Tapos makakontrolin natin with oversight yan eh. Diba? Kung it's a law. We can also, kasi ang problema, magandang layunin. I read the EO. Magandang all of country, all of government approach.
Whole
kasi,
approach, yeah.
the whole approach. Kailangan whole approach. Kasi yung kabuhayan, social services, tapos may law enforcement. Diba? So it's a ganda. Implementation lang ang bantayan natin.
So it means it's very important for the oversight.
Oversight is important.
Thank you. Senator J.V. Ejercito.
Aside from NTF-LCAC, I would go for a supplement to this program, which is massive infrastructure development, because I believe that this will be the the way to spread out the development to the countryside. No, the reason why the rebels or the insurgency is able to recruit is because of the stomach. No? Hungry stomach knows no loss. Madali mag-recruit. But if there are jobs and opportunities, you create growth development areas in the countryside, I think the insurgency will slowly die because people will now have jobs and opportunities.
Okay, Senator Honasan.
Itong insurgency, hindi ito laban between soldiers and rebels. No? Okay lang, masaktan sila, mamatay. Ang problema, morally unacceptable. Pag tinatamaan yung civilian, bata, matanda, babae, lalaki, that is unacceptable. So, no, how do you fight an idea for an insurgency, for terrorism? You fight it with a better idea. Good government. At ang front line natin dyan, local government.
Thank you. And Secretary Panelo.
Ito kaugnay sa sinabi ni dating Senador Ayers ito, yung supplement. Actually, yung pong NTF LCAC fund, yun nga ginagamit. Part nun ay ginagamit sa infrastruktura. Kaya nga precisely nagkakaroon ng farm-to-market roads, yung mga kalsada nila, yung sa bundok. Ako po'y nasaksihan ko yun dahil nagpunta ako sa mga bundok na ito at nakita ko na dahil sa NTF LCAC, sila ay nagbago na ng buhay nila.
Salamat. Nakita ko si Mr. Jess Aranza. Hindi ko yata natanong.
Sagot lang doon sa kung magkaibigan o magkaaway. Sabi ko,
Yes.
wala pa akong nakita magkaibigan nagpapatayan.
Galing.
Yes, go ahead, Deputy Speaker Marcoleta.
Ang insurgency po ay talagang kalaban ng pamahalaan. Kaya nga ang tawag po ay insurgency. Ang idea ay para ibagsak ang pamahalaan. Wala po sigurong kaibigan na naghahangad na ang pamahalaan na ating pinakamamahal na dapat pagtagumpayan ay gustong ibagsak. Kaya kalaban po sila.
So, malakas na lahat kayo ay in favor of institutionalizing the NTF LCAC?
Daphne, last question.
Oh, go ahead.
On the issue of NTF LCAC.
Go ahead.
Well, meron ng mga senadores, no? Incumbent senators, na nag-announce na tanggalan ng budget o defund ang NTF LCAC. Meron kayang reaction kayo doon?
Reaction, please. Go ahead, Secretary
Yeah,
Belica.
napansin ko po yan nung malapit ng eleksyon. Saan inilipat yung pera? Doon po sa mga insertions. Insertions para sa kalang mga programa dahil po doon posibleng may korupsyon. Di ko nilalahat. Pero inilalagay yung pera sa korupsyon na dapat na doon sana sa paglaban sa terorismo.
Follow up to Commissioner Belica. Kayo po'y quoted as saying, no, sa investigasyon nyo sa pork barrel,
yes, sir,
na around 10 to 15% nawawala doon dahil sa corruption.
Tama po yan. Conservative po yun. May mas malalaki pa raw doon. Pero yun po ang sinasabi sa akin. Pinagbawal po ng Korte Suprema ang PDAF, ang pork barrel system. Yun po ang aking inilaban noong 2013 na tinawag na Belica ruling. Pero now, I guess the legislators, a lot of legislators have learned how to skirt around the law. And yan po ang sinasabi ko that we have to create a anti-corruption body strong enough that will have jurisdiction over all government officials, not only with presidential appointees like the PACC, so we can hold accountable government officials and private individuals who get involved in corruption and impose a penalty of death against corruption.
Thank you.
And heinous crime.
So galit sila dahil yung projects ay hindi sa kanila.
Opo, galit po sila.
Thank you.
Actually, lahat po ng ang usap-usapan sa baba, basta raw bumaba sa distrito, doon daw po yun sa ibang mga congressman.
Okay.
So yung project may kasama ng contractor. Tama
Kasama
po ba?
na po yun. Kabisado niya yan, Gob.
Well, narinig ko on the ground, no? Advance pa daw yun eh.
Tama po. Thank you for...
Let's go on to Secretary Panelo.
As an additional response to Congressman Rolex, yung po tinatanong nyo na may mga senador na kumontra sa NTF-LCAC. Publicly, ang masasabi ko po sa kanila, either kayo ay naliligaw ng landas or meron kayong hidden agenda sapagkat kinokontra nyo yung para sa mga taong makikinabang sa NTF-LCAC.
Okay. We have a follow-up question or a message from Dr. Carlos.
Yeah, final follow-up. I noticed that some of you had used the term communist insurgency. Who is a communist? I think it was the only country using that term, by the way.
I don't think it's...
Sino ba yung komunista?
Wala na yun,
Can we have some definition of terms?
Okay.
So, unless, we know what it is, let's just stop talking about a communist insurgency. You just have an insurgency. It is not a communist insurgency. The so-called communist countries are out and out capitalist. So
There's no
please
such
stop
thing.
using the term communist.
I agree.
You cannot defend that.
Thank you, Dr. Carlos. Reaction from Yusek Pimentel.
I agree with Professor Carlos not to call them communist. Kagaya nung katanungan, kung ang mga NPA ba ay kalaban o kaibigan, ang sasabihin ko, ang mga NPA ay Pilipinong nangangailangan ng serbisyo ng gobyerno.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Diaz.
In going back to the NTF-ELCAC, I believe that if elected senator, I would use NTF-ELCAC to promote my advocacy of total economic emancipation to the common Filipino. That could be a very good vehicle.
Thank you. Let's hear from Miss Kiram.
Yung tungkol naman sa kung ang NPA is kalaban or hindi. Sa nakikita ko, may pinaglalaban lang din sila. Hindi ko sinasabing ano sila ng gobyerno. Kaya lang may pinaglalaban sila na dapat pakinggan siguro ng national, ng gobyerno. Kasi mula noon hanggang ngayon, actually pawala na yung iba. Tayong sa mga generation namin pababa, hindi na alam kung anong ibig sabihin nun. So meron silang mga nire-recruit na mga mas bata. Tapos sumasama sila dahil may mga ideology na akala nila tama.
Salamat.
Quickly,
Go ahead,
just
Dr.
very
Wei.
quick. You've mentioned na may nire-recruit silang mga bata. So basically, you're talking about child soldier, no? Or warrior child. If ever you be elected as senator of this country, how would you address that in terms of legislation?
Siguro po general knowledge sa mga sa schools, sa mga bata, pati na rin sa mga magulang na etong kailangan turuan po yung mga nakakabata sa atin kasi yung mga nag-aanong NPA or kung sino man na kumakalaban sa gobyerno, may mga pinaglalaban yan. Kaya lang, ang problema, hindi natin alam kung ano ba talaga. Nung unang panahon, yes, alam natin, pero ngayon hindi na kasi natin alam kung ano talaga.
Anyone can answer the question about the issue of recruitment, no? Because she mentioned about recruitment of children, no? In terms of being child soldiers. So, if elected as senators, how would you address that?
Go ahead, Senator Harnasan.
It's a very important issue, no? When you talk about child's right, yeah.
Dr. Ana, we might want to consider applying the power of information and communications technology to improve our data management. Madidiscover po natin yan, no? Yung mga kandidato na mapupunta sa Senado. Sa Senado po, kanya-kanyang expert. Kanya-kanyang data. The COVID has allowed us to look at problems that existed before the COVID, which is baseline data management. It will tell us where they are recruiting the child soldiers.
Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead, Deputy Speaker Marcoleta.
Bago ko sagutin yun, ay babalik tayo dun sa tanong ni Dr. Carlos kasi tinatanong niya, sino ba yung nagsabi ng communist insurgency? Sino po ba sa amin yung nagsabi, Dr. Carlos?
Ako actually ang nagsabi na. So I'm being addressed.
Siguro, dahil 75 na ako, baka nakalimutan ko kung sino nagsabi. So,
salamat po.
It's
wag na
okay,
lang
it's
kayo
okay.
umamin. Basta natinig ko yun.
Salamat. Balikan natin ang legislation about the child soldiers.
May I respond to Professor Carlos? Why some of us or one of us use the word communist insurgency? We must remember that there is such thing as Communist Party of the Philippines. They call themselves communist. They adopted communism as their ideology. They are espousing the same ideology that has been espoused by communist leaders of yesteryears. That is the reason why one or some of us are using the word communist insurgency.
My main objection in regard to that is you attach the term to the term insurgency. And so when you do that, I agree with you. There's a Communist Party of the Philippines, there's Partido Comunista ng Pilipinas, but My concern is when you define the insurgency in terms of that ideological framework, which is not the case. That is the reason why, because I'm a political scientist, I'd rather that you use a little bit more precise term. Let's just call it insurgency, please, because it's not communist insurgency as communist from the theoretical framework of Karl Marx and other socialist thinkers. Para lang malinis, no?
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Dr. Carlos. Again,
About the child soldiers.
Yeah, before we go on a break, we would like to know about...
How would you prevent recruitment of children, to participate in insurgency? In different aspects. As senators, let us say you're senators already, no? And you have to legislate a law to prevent that. So how would you address that? Yes, sir?
Ms. Pimentel first, yeah?
Education is very important. At kung titingnan natin yung datos about the child soldiers, karamihan ng nare-recruit nilang mga child soldiers are members of the indigenous peoples. Dahil nga ang mga indigenous peoples have lesser access. Ito nga yung nais nating ipaglaban dahil yung ating mga IPs have no access to education dahil walang paaralan o kung meron mang paaralan, napakalayo sa kanila. At dahil dito, madali silang ma-recruit, madali silang mabilog ang kanilang mga utak.
Okay. Any addition to that?
Yes.
Go ahead, Secretary Panelo.
I agree, because there is no legislation that can stop it. You have to educate them. The whys and the wherefores of such kind of ideology that is very destructive. Wala po talagang kahit na maglagay ka dyan ng batas. Pag yung mga dahilan kung bakit umusbong ang rebellion at ang tinatawag na insurgency dito sa bansa ay naririyan pa rin, ay hindi niyo po matatanggal kahit na 1,000 batas ang ipasa natin sa Kongreso.
Okay, salamat. Dr. Padilla.
I just want to say I agree with both Yusek, Pimentel, and Mr. Panelo, Attorney Panelo. You cannot legislate that, no? Economic development is the answer. That's why we have to really give them economic development, no? And education. And the indigenous people have to be protected. We have to treat them special. We have to give them ways and means to earn a living. Once you have that, hindi na sila sasama sa mga insurgents. Kasi pera lang yan eh. It's more money than anything else. Walang ideology. Give them livelihood. Yeah.
Mr. Jess Aranza.
If you disperse economic development, encourage industry to locate branches or stay in areas, in far-flung areas where there are no developments, you will be able to develop, create a balanced development and income. You can achieve a more equitable distribution of wealth.
Okay.
Hindi magagandang nangyayari sa lipunan, wala siyang makapitan. Ito po yung problema. Kaya nga po, hindi natin malilegislate talaga yan. Pero yung LCAC, ito po ay isang approach na ginagawa ng gobyerno para sa ganun ma-address. Nga po ito, kahit pa unti-unti, magsimula tayo at...
Panelists, and thank you for candidates for addressing all the questions, sir. This is just the end of round one. So we have to move on, and don't go away. SMNI Senatorial Debate 2022. We'll be right back. We're now at the second round of our debate. Our questions at this point will be from one of our SMNI anchors and a representative from a sector. For this round, we have the same mechanics of the debate. Each candidate has 60 seconds to answer each question, and later on, we will have 30 seconds of interpolation and rebuttals. Our first question is from Sas Rogando Sasot, SMNI anchor based in the Netherlands.
If during your term as senator, the executive department entered into a non-aggression treaty with China to not allow any foreign country to use one's territory as a base for direct or indirect aggression and intervention against the other country, how will you decide during the ratification of this non-aggression treaty with China?
Okay, we will now start with Deputy Speaker Rodante Marcoleta.
The question is on whether or not the Philippines will sign a non-aggression treaty with China.
I think it's for other countries.
I think we have to be guided by our state policy. I will go back to that because our state policy states that in our relationship with other states, the paramount consideration is national sovereignty, our political integrity, our national interest, and our right to self-determination. I will be able to process that by being able to reflect on these guideposts. If in my determination, all these particular factors and elements of our state policies are served, then I will act in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. We move on to Senator Gringo Honasan.
What will drive our decision to sign a non-aggression treaty is our foreign policy, our foreign policy, our security policy, and economic policy. And this will be based on how we define our national interest. But our audience is not only China, but the entire global community. We must continue to occupy high moral ground by pushing for peace and economic stability, political stability in the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from Senator J.V. Ejercito.
As long as our sovereignty is protected, then and our territorial integrity are both protected, then we have to study this one. No? And likewise, if we also agree that we want peace in China. If we can have joint exploration probably, but we will have to make sure that if ever it's in our property, we have to in territory. We have to be on the upper ground. No, we have to make sure in the Senate that we will not be shortchanged. No? In fact, we have to be on the high ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jess Aranza.
We have a favorable decision from the arbitral court. How will that be affected if we sign? Will that totally erase that victory? If it will not, then I will agree. But if it does, then I will not.
Thank you. Let's move on to Dr. Mingita Padilla.
I don't think I will immediately sign it. I don't think it's even necessary, because if it's a non-aggression, it means we will not be, do anything against the other. It's like I don't want my hands to be tied for that. Because if something really necessitates me partnering with another country because they did something to us, I don't want my hands to be tied. So I will not sign such a treaty without studying it very well. It should not be against our country's interest. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Nur Mahal Kiram.
Kung makakatulong po ito sa Pilipinas, then it's okay. Magsasign po tayo. Pero kung halimbawa wala naman po siyang kinalaman or konti lang po yung mapapakinabangan po natin, then pag-aralan muna po natin ulit.
Thank you. Mr. Ding Diaz.
When it comes to ratification of foreign treaties, I believe the main basis of any particular senator would be what is good for the people, because what is good for the people is going to be good for the country. Now, considering that the other country in particular is China, then we are talking actually of the entire region, if not the entire Asia. A non-aggression agreement, tulad nga po ng sinabi ni Doktora, wala naman po ito dahil non-aggression. But in actuality, kasi po, world powers play by perception. It's always a mind game. It's always a psychological game for them. And it's the same thing that is happening in the West Philippine Sea, same thing that's happening in Europe, same thing that's happening in any particular country. We play our cards right. I will sign if it is for the betterment of the Filipino people.
Thank you. Yusek Astra Pimentel.
When we look at the history of the Philippines and China, we have always been trade partners. Nagsimula pa sa barter, hanggang sa ngayon ay kapartner natin ang Chinese. Wherever we look, wherever we go, there are Chinese Filipinos around us. The non-aggressive treaty, if we look at all the conditions that's being there, I would consider it, most especially if what's being said there, what's being placed there are towards peace, development, economic development, exchange of technology that is geared towards mutual development. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary Manny Piñol.
Again, let me repeat that foreign policy is the exclusive domain of the President. But I will share my thoughts on this issue. Number one, is there really a need for a non-aggression treaty? Is there a threat of aggression in the first place? If there's none, I don't see any reason why we should sign a non-aggression treaty. Second, if there is indeed a need for a non-aggression treaty, would, as emphasized by Mr. Aranza, would the WPS issue come into play? If this is settled, then I will support it. But if that is not settled, I will not support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary Greco Belgica.
No. It's tantamount to surrendering our opportunity to protect ourselves.
Correct.
I think it's a trap. It's a trap to... Now, who will define and how will you define aggression in the first place? Suddenly, they call you out to be aggressive, then what do you do? So, I think that will not work. It is an impossible condition for peace. I still maintain that the only way to have peace is to make your enemies know that you're ready for war at any time.
Secretary Salvador Panelo.
My position would be, then as now, the President espouses this kind of foreign policy. We are friends to all and enemies to none. But if any of our friends assault our territorial integrity and sovereignty, then we become enemy of that friend of ours. Kailangan po, ang lahat ng mga tratado na papasukan natin ay kailangan palaging batay sa interes ng ating bansa. Hindi pwede na tayo magpapaloko, magpapabola, at mahihikaya tayong pumasok sa isang tratado na pagdating ng panahon ay pagsisisihan natin. Kailangan po pag-aralang mabuti. Pero gaya nga ng sinabi ng iba nating mga kasama, teka muna, non-aggression. Baka talian mo sarili mo dyan. Baka ikaw ang bitahin ng sinasabing kaibigan.
Thank you. And now all the candidates have answered. It's time for interpellation. Go ahead, Deputy Speaker Marcoleta.
Sinabi po ni Kadjes Aranza at ni Secretary Piñol na sila'y magdidesisyon lamang kung walang epekto ito dun sa arbitral decision. It is as if that decision has something to do with the question at hand. Ano po ba ang ibig niyong sabihin na dapat masettle dun sa decision? Ano po ba yung decision?
Go ahead, Mr. Aranza.
Yung pinanalo nating desisyon, siguro alam mo naman yun. Ang tanong ko lang, yung ba ay nakapending? Pero sinasabi natin na hamot nakapending yan habang kung anumang pagdating ng oras, babalikan. Pero kung yan ay alisin, anong bali walang pinaglalaban natin, baliwalang pinag-usapan natin. Ganun ho ba ang gusto natin?
Daphne, follow-up question on that issue.
Go ahead, Dr. Uy.
The question of Ms. Sass is actually, if you will enter into non-aggression treaty with China, but the operative word there, I think, operative words there is, the specific is no, it's like asking you to commit that there should be no foreign military bases in the country. So if you will not ratify or you will not join that kind of alliance or agreement with China, would it mean as well, on the other hand, that you're open that, the country would have foreign military bases? Is that so? Because the question is, no foreign military bases in the country, which equates to non-aggression. That's what the question is all about. So now, since you said that, we don't want to do that because, it would compromise the sovereignty, national security of the country. Now, the question is, so would it mean that you're open, that the Philippines would have foreign military bases in the country in some ways? Or, to that extent? That's a question, no? That's just a question.
Okay, let's go back to Mr. Marcoleta. Go ahead.
That will complicate matters even more because our constitution prohibits the presence of foreign forces in our shore, and then of course we cannot barter our state policy that the state should pursue an independent foreign policy. We will not be able to maintain such neutrality or independent foreign policy if there is that kind of condition dangled to us.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead, ma'am. Ms. Pimentel.
Entering into a non-aggressive treaty with China actually puts us at an advantage because that is the time that we could already set our ground rules with them. We could always give them what we want as far as the relationship between China and the Philippines.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Belgica.
Simple as disarming yourself in front of an enemy that is armed against you. So, in the situation we don't have the military capabilities to fight China. And the posing threat, yung pag-withdrawin ka ng, alisin mo yung mga arms mo, is already saying na surrender ka na sa akin. And if you don't surrender to me, then I will be aggressive to you. So we can't get into that kind of agreement.
Secretary Panelo and then Senator Honasan.
Regarding the concern of candidate Aranza, he says that the non-aggression treaty might affect the arbitral ruling. Let me say that the arbitral ruling cannot be diminished by anyone or by any force on earth. That is permanent. Whether they like it or not, we want it, and it will be there forever, like the Rock of Gibraltar.
Thank you, Senator Honasan.
The Philippines is 120 years old. When we deal with a country like China with a history of 5,000 to 8,000 years, we better be careful. And there is such a thing as diplomacy. The situation sometimes is, even before the terms of reference are clear, we broadcast ourselves over media, which puts both parties in a corner. We paint ourselves into a corner. So our foreign policy, our security policy, our economic policy is a function of our ability to enforce and leverage it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, candidates. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Before we go to our closing statement, I would like to announce to our audience to please watch out for the final round of the SMNI presidential debate on March 26, 2022 at Okada, Manila. Okay, so now we are headed to our final part of the Debate, which is now the closing statement, and all of you will have 90 minutes.
Excuse me.
90 seconds. We don't want 90 minutes.
Kanina,
Yeah, I'm gonna keep you all here for 90 minutes.
kanina ko pa kasi
Sige.
Dalawa lang ho. Gusto ko lang malaman, despite we are trying to entice foreign investors, I just want to be clarified by Mr. Diaz. What does he mean by economic emancipation? And to my friend, Congressman Marcoleta, ang tanong ko lang is, nabanggit mo tungkol dun sa Saba claim, kadidesisyon lang nung Sakuta Kinabalo nung 2020. Ang ibig bang sabihin, wala na tayong hope doon? Sa Constitution may nakalagay ata na in other areas. Baka doon tayo pumasok.
All right, let's go to Mr. Diaz and then Mr. Marcoleta.
By economic emancipation, what I mean is giving to the people what they are due, and that is the ability to rise above the misery and poverty that they are encountering right now. Sa akin pong palagay, ito po ay may isa sa katapwaran sa pamamagitan po ng encouragement, motivation of the two kinds of investments, foreign direct investments and local investments. And by the proper supportive legislatures, this can happen because the Filipino is capable of rising above himself.
Thank you. Deputy Speaker Marcoleta.
Yung tanong po ni Kadjes, na-define na po kasi sa ating national territory na wala na po yung historic right or legal title. Kaya hindi po natin magagamit yon kahit na po anong sinasabi nating kota Kinabalu. Yun pong food security kanina, may nagsabi, ano po ang pagkakaiba ng food security sa food sufficiency? Hindi po yata nasasagot yun. At pagkatapos nito, ay kailangan nating magkaroon ng pangwawakas pero hindi namin magawa sa loob lamang ng 1 minuto. Napakahirap po yata nung aming kalagayan ngayon.
Okay, maraming salamat.
Can I respond to?
Maraming salamat. I'm sorry we are out of time. I wish I could give you more time. Maraming salamat sa ating mga candidates and our panelists. But before we go, I would like to give you 90 seconds each. Should you be elected as Senator of the Republic of the Philippines, what legacy will you bring to the Filipino people? Let's start with Senator Honasan, and we're going to go down the line here.
Sa aming mga kababayan, the Philippines is a blessed country. And our most precious resource are our next generation of citizens and leaders, our children. May kasabihan, we Filipinos, historically, we never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. So magkaisa tayo, magtulungan tayo. Saludo po ako sa inyo.
Maraming salamat. Senator J.V. Ejercito.
Noong 2013, noon ako'y unang inihaan ng sarili ko sa sambayanan. Ang sabi ko, gusto ko guminawa ang buhay ng sambayanan ng Pilipino. After 6 years of being in the Senate, I pursued programs and legislation that is designed really to uplift the living conditions of our people. I'm quite proud I was able to pass 2 landmark laws, Universal Healthcare Act, which seeks to give access to good quality healthcare for all Filipinos, and the creation of the Department of Human Settlements or Housing, so that the housing program will further improve, so that there will be no more informal settlers in 30 to 40 years' time. Likewise, I push for infrastructure development, the railway system, the airport modernization, because as I've mentioned earlier, this will spread out the development to the countrysides, create growth development areas, and produce jobs and opportunities. Sa ating mga kababayan, marami na ho tayong ipasa, pero marami pa tayong dapat gawin. Kailangan po natin matutukan ang ang Universal Healthcare Act. Sana ako'y hayaan yung tapusin ko ang implementasyon nito para mas lalong maramdaman ng sambayan ng Pilipino. Dapat po zero balance billing, lalong-lalo na senior citizens, indigents, may hirap, at lalong-lalo na ang PWDs. Ito'y work in progress, kaya nga isa sa mga rason kung bakit ako'y nagdesisyon na bumalik sa Senado upang matapos ang ito. Isa para sa kalusugan, isa para sa babahay, at syempre isa sa infrastruktura para para po sa trabaho. At muli po ay ibalik po natin ang good sa Senado. Marami pa tayong gagawin at gagawin po natin. JBS po.
Thank you. Mr. Jess Aranza, your legacy to the
Mahal
Philippines.
kong kababayan, Gagawin ko ang lahat upang maibalik natin ang sigla ng ekonomiya ng ating bansa na siyang solusyon sa mga paghihirap ngayon. Gagawin ko rin na matulungan ang ating mga magsasaka. Ang inaisip ko ay isang Pilipinas na walang mahirap, na sana masaya ang tao, pantay na pantay, ang hindi naman pantay ang income, but pareho-pareho silang nabibigayaan ng ating pong may kapal. Mahirap po sabihin ang lahat. Marami na akong nagawa sa pribadong sektor. 5 level cases ang naifile sa akin sa paghabol ko sa mga substandard at sa mga smuggled goods sa bansa natin. 250 billion ang hinahabol ko. Walang tumutulong sa akin, maski saan sa Kongreso. Kaya ako'y naghihinayang, kaya ako'y tumatakbo upang sa ganun, baka sakali may mandato ako, ay may bigay ko sa tao kung anong dapat na ibibigay sa kanila. Salamat po sa inyo sa pakikinig, at ang kasabihan nun natin, ang ating bansa ay isang mayabong na bansa. Wala hong dahilan kung bakit tayo maging mahirap. Question lamang, patakbuhin natin. Ang industriya po ay siyang sinatawag na backbone of our economy. Gagawin po natin yan at gagawin nating masigasig at maligaya ang ating mga kababayang Pilipino. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you. Dr. Menggita Padilla.
First of all, salamat ng marami sa SMNI at sa nag-organize ito at sa mga panelists. Maraming salamat po. Ako po isang doktor na nagsilbi na sa bayan ng 34 years. Marami na akong nagawa sa pribadong sektor. Tumulong din ako sa gobyerno sa maraming paraan. Gusto ko makatulong pa sa mas malawak na paraan. At kung bibigyan niyo po ako ng pagkakataon, ito lang po ang masasabi ko. Anong legacy mabibigay ko sa inyo? Isang public servant ho, na lahat ho ng aking dedikasyon, karunungan, integridad na binigay ko sa pagiging doktor ay iaalay ko sa inyong lahat bilang inyong senador. Yun lang po masasabi ko sa inyo. And kalusugan, kabataan, pagkain, food security po, climate change, resiliency, hindi natin napag-usapan. Lahat ho ito talagang ipupursigi ko. And finally ho, I always tell people, buksan ho natin ang mata ng ating mga puso. Doon lang natin makikita ang tunay na liwanag. Buksan natin ang mata natin, ang asing isip, at turuan ho natin ang ating mga anak. Pumili ho tayo ng mga tapat, mga matalino, may alam, at may pusong mga leader. Yun lang po ang aking hinihingi sa inyong lahat.
Thank you. Ms. Noor Mahal Kiram.
Iano ko po ang bill na i-recognize po ang Sultanate of Sulu. Bakit? Dahil mula po noon, nakalimutan na po natin ang kasaysayan natin. Diyan po nagmula ang gobyerno dati. Hayaan niyo po na magkaroon po ng boses ang Muslim. Dahil sa sobrang tagal na po, walang naging boses ang Muslim dito sa Senado natin. Mag-start nung pagkatapos ng term ni Santa Nina Rasul. Dito po, mapagbubuklod po natin, ibibigay po natin ang peace and development. Dahil po sa Sultanate, nung winala po nila ang Sultanate, dyan po nagkawatak-watak ang Muslim. At the same time, eto pong ating mga tribes, humihingi rin po ng boses dito sa Senado na para mabigyan naman po sila ng karapatan na pareho po ng dito po sa national. Ang Sultanate po ang makakatulong. Malaki po ang maitutulong namin sa inyo. Dahil po dito sa Sabah claim, nanalo na rin po kami sa arbitration. Ito po, malaki pong maitutulong namin dito sa gobyerno. Matagal na po namin pinapropose po yan.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ding Diaz.
Marami po ang mga suliranin na hinaharap po ng ating mga kababayan. At ako po, nasabi ko nga sa isang panayam, ay hindi ako masyado nag-aalala sa pandemya dahil alam ko lilipas yan. And we will learn to cope up with it. But I'm really more concerned about the economic repercussions that have been brought about by this pandemic and the crisis. You know, alam po natin marami po ang nagsara. However, what is a shimmer, glitter of light na nakikita ko po, yung resilience ng mga Pilipino. Nakikita po natin, ang Pilipino, kahit po saan itapon, kaya po niyan lumutang, kaya po niyang maging magaling dahil po sa kanyang angking talino at galing. Ang Pilipino po, nakakalungkot lamang na pinapakinabangan. Kanina po nag-uusap po tayo about seafarers. Ito po ay katumbas na rin ng pagtatrabaho sa ibang bansa. Bakit po ang karaniwang Pilipino, para magkaroon ng pagkakataon ng mas magandang kinabukasan, kailangan po mga ibang bayan sumakay po ng mga dayuhang barko upang mabigyan at magampanan ng kaganapan ang kanyang responsibilidad sa mga mahal sa buhay. Kung pwede naman po, dito na lang sana. Ang tanong po lagi ng aking mga pinupuntahan, sino si Ding Diaz? Si Ding Diaz po, isang karaniwang Pilipino. Walang maraming pinag-aralan, walang mga sikat na eskwelahan, ngunit handang gugulin ang anumang produktibong natitirang buhay, taon sa kanyang buhay para paglingkuran ng tapat ang karaniwang mamayan.
Thank you. Yusek Astra Pimentel.
Astra Pimentel po, lumalaban para sa pag-asa at para sa katatagan ng sambayanan. Ipagpapatuloy ang sinimulang pagbabago ng Pangulong Duterte sa pamamagitan ng pagiging boses ng ating mga overseas Filipinos at overseas Filipino workers. 12 million, more or less, are the Filipinos overseas. They need our protection. They need that we advance their welfare. Ang mundo po ay nababago ang istorya dahil sa mga Pilipinong nasa halos lahat ng bansa sa buong mundo. Magpapalakas sa lokal na pamahalaan sa pamamagitan ng pagsulong ng federalismo, sa pagsulong ng Magna Carta for barangay officials, at magtatayo ng dignidad ng ating mga kababaihan, kabataan, at ng mga katutubo. Bilang isang Maranao, bilang isang Talaandig at bilang isang higaonon, nandito ako para bigyan ng pag-asa ang ating mga kababayang katutubo. Kung merong AstraZeneca na pag-asa at panlaban ninyo sa pandemya, merong Astra Pimentel, bakuna ninyo sa Senado.
Thank you. Secretary Manny Piñol.
Ako po si Manny Piñol, isang tunay na magsasaka na naniniwalang pwede tayong magkaroon ng sapat na pagkain. 30 million hectares, 36,289 coastline, lima sa pinakamahaba sa mundo, sapat na tubig. We can be food sufficient. But we have to correct some flaws in our legislations and policies. Number one, baguhin natin ang rice tarification law. Pinapahirapan natin ang ating mga magsasaka na lalong nasasaktan sa mataas na presyo ng abono. Baguhin natin ang ating marketing system. Alam ninyo, as I speak, ang presyo ng tamban sa Zamboanga del Norte, 5 piso ang 1 kilo. Pwedeng dalhin sa Manila, pero sino magdadala? Government must come in and arrange the shipment of these goods from the production areas to the market. Kailangan din nating baguhin yung ating policy on importation. We have to return to the mountains and protect the forest. We have to conserve our water resources. We have to build roads, infrastructure. We have to support local industries. And most of all, kailangan natin ng isang bangko na totoong na magbibigay ng pautang sa mga magsasaka sa mababang interest. And lastly, we could start a nutrition-based food production program by legislation, and we have to institutionalize this para hindi pabago-bago ang ating programa kapag nagpalit ang ating Pangulo. Salamat po.
Okay. Secretary Greco Belhica.
Ako po si Greco Bellica, nagpatanggal ng pork barrel at DAP sa Supreme Court. At ako din po ang pinuno ng Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission, ang opisina na nilikha ng Pangulong Duterte para labanan ng korupsyon. Sa akin pong termino, pinakamaraming sinibak, pinakamaraming kinasuhan, pinakamaraming kinulong, at pinakamaraming inimbestigahan ng opisina ng Pangulo dahil sa korupsyon. 154 cases po against high-ranking government officials ang aming sinampa, 800 pong government officials ang aming pinasibak ni Pangulong Duterte, 24 po ang aming pinakulong na government officials at 13,000 pong reports on corruption ang amin pong inaksyonan. Ito po ang trabahong pagpapatuloy ko sa Senado. Ang problema po ngayon, maraming sikat na kandidato, sikat na korap. At ang Pilipino po bumoboto ng korap basta sikat. Ibig pong sabihin, maraming mananalong korap. Mga kaibigan, kawawa po ang ating bayan. Pagpapatuloy ko po ang labang yan sa Senado at kung gusto po ninyo ng mas malakas na laban sa korupsyon, kaya ko po yun.
Thank you. Secretary Salvador Panelo.
Sa Senado, itutuloy ko po ang mga sinimulan ni Presidente Duterte, isang serbisyong malasakit at matapang. Susuportahan ko po ang mga batas sa build, laban sa droga, illegal na droga. At lahat po ng mga batas na magbibigay ng katugunan sa lahat ng pangangailangan ng mga kababayan natin, ang mangingisda, ang magsasaka, ang mga drivers, ang mga OFWs, ang mga ina ng tahanan, at lalong-lalo na ang mga senior citizens at mga PWDs, at higit sa lahat, ang mga special children na nangangailangan ng ating pagkalinga. Itutuloy po nating lahat yan. Susuportahan po natin ang sinumang mahalal na presidente. Kung ang presidenteng yan ay manghihikayat ng pagkakaisa at itutuloy ang mga reformang sinimulan ni Presidente Duterte. Ako po, si Sal Panelo sa balota, Salvador Sal Panelo, number 50 sa balota. Meron po akong slogan. May slogan po ako, pakinggan niyo mga Panelo, Panalo, Senado. Kay Panelo, kayo ay panalo. Salamat po.
Deputy Speaker Rodante Marcoleta. Okay, thank you very much.
Bibihira po ang nabibigyan ng pagkakataon makapagsilbi sa bansa at sa kanyang mamamayan. Ang isang senador po na may elect ng taong bayan ay kailangang wag niyang sirain at wag niyang sayangin ang pagtitiwalang ibinigay sa kanya. Ang senador po ay dalawa lamang ang kanyang gagawin, yung constituency function at saka yung legislative function. Ito pong legislative function ay nababahagi sa dalawa. Ito po yung paggamit sa tinatawag nating formal inquiry na kung saan ay gagawin mo lamang para mag-legislate. At yung isa naman ay oversight function para sa ganon ay mahimay mo at makita mo kung paano ini-implement ang mga batas. Napakarami nating magagandang batas na hindi po na-implement. Katulad po ng EPIRA, hanggang ngayon, mataas pa rin po ang singil. Yun pong ating public education, yung Republic Act 8487 ay nilabag po ng Department of Education. Hindi po kailangang mangyari ang mga ito. Magaganda po ang batas, ang senador po ay dapat gumawa ng mga bagay na maiaayos lahat natin ang magagandang batas na ginawa natin. Kailangan ng senador ay mag-iwan po ng magandang halimbawa kung ano ang kanyang tunay na gawain. Dante Marcoleta po, hindi sikat, ngunit maglilingkod ng tapat.
Thank you. Well, tonight definitely gave us a deeper understanding of the candidates' stand on certain issues. And we hope that after this series of SMNI Senatorial debates, the Filipino people will really be able to decide on who to vote for this coming elections. And once again, we invite you all to please watch out for the final round of the SMNI Presidential Debate right here at Okada, Manila. Thank you again to all our candidates. Thank you so much for being here today. And thank you to the panelists, Dr. Carlos, Attorney Rolex, Dr. Uy, and Mr. Ang. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. And thank you most of all to everyone who watched us tonight. It was a pleasure moderating this event. I am Daphne Osanya Paez.